I got involved with Turning Point last summer when I attended the YWLS. Ever since then, I just kind of wanted to get more and more involved with Turning Point, and when I read about their intern program, I thought it would be a good fit, and thought I'd give it a go.
Well, just my short time here in Turning Point in Chicago, I've written a booklet on gun control that's going to get published by Turning Point. It's amazing.
I just became really passionate about politics and the organization itself, so I wanted to become even more involved than just being a chapter member at my school and things like that and attending the conferences. I wanted to be able to contribute to the organization even more.
Well, honestly, when I had first heard about Turning Point USA, it was at CPAC in 2015. What I noticed was that everyone with the t-shirts, and it was just the excitement, and I knew that this was something different. It was a student movement.
After I went on West Palm Beach, I just saw all the like-minded conservative individuals that I was able to talk to, all the different trainings I was able to engage in, and I wanted to be able to help others enjoy the same experience.
Neo-Nazis don't love me, they kind of hate me, actually.
Following the KKK, neo-Nazi.
Those people don't like me,
Are you
to be
like
honest.
the hipster version of the neo-Nazi movement?
It's, Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
New York Times, January 21st, 2017. Attack on alt-right leader has internet asking, is it okay to punch a Nazi? Is it okay to punch a Nazi? That's not a brain teaser or a hypothetical question posed by a magazine on Twitter. It is an actual question bouncing around the internet after an attack on a well-known far-right activist, Richard B. Spencer, in Washington after the inauguration of Donald J. Trump as president on Friday. Mr. Spencer, who is credited with coining the term alt-right and describes himself as an identitarian, was punched in the head on Inauguration Day by a person clad in black as he was being interviewed by a journalist. At the time of the attack, Mr. Spencer was explaining the meaning of Pepe the Frog, a cartoon figure adopted as a mascot by the alt-right, a racist far-right fringe movement that is anti-immigrant, anti-Semitic, and anti-feminist. Video of the attack shows Mr. Spencer reeling to one side under the force of the blow and his attacker darting through a crowd after landing the punch. Video of the attack quickly inspired a flood of jokes and memes online, some of which set the punch to songs like Born in the USA. John Favreau, a former speechwriter for Barack Obama, was one of the many who posted a comment. There was little substantive debate online about the ethics of punching Mr. Spencer. Twitter is not a place where minds are often changed, and the supporters and opponents of the sucker punch were unmoved by one another's quips. Opponents of the punch tended to say that violence had no place in political debate. Supporters tended to say that the punch was funny, and more than a few compared Mr. Spencer's attacker to famous Nazi punchers from pop culture like Indiana Jones and Captain America.
There's no need for critical discourse of it. There's no need to have a nuanced discussion. Can we punch a Nazi? No, of course, the New York Times, because they are pussies. We're like, yo, let's have a discussion about, is it right? Is it okay to punch a Nazi? Someone sat down at their computer and was like, yo,
let's get these clicks, baby.
Are we punching Nazis? We literally had a huge world war where we had to tag up with other countries to beat the out of the Nazis because they were wiping out a race of people. And y'all like, yo, let's hear them out. Man, let's hear what they're talking about.
Let's see what they're about.
No.
Like, you know what Nazis is about.
See, when Twitter, when they're like, yo, you liberals, you want your safe space and you snowflakes, this is what they're talking about, like dumb shit like this.
The internet has been abuzz the past few weeks about this video of famed white supremacist douchebag Richard Spencer getting punched and then proceeding to cry like a baby-ass wimp boy while being interviewed about his idiotic cartoon frog pen.
It's, Pepe's become kind of a symbol.
While many cheered and many more remixed the video to hits from yesterday and today, some people took it upon themselves to write think piece after think piece about the ethics of Nazi punching. Look, I know that an intellectual's hierarchy of needs peaks at moral superiority, but give it a rest. Punching a Nazi is the ethical choice, because people only become Nazis when they didn't get that urge punched out of them in childhood. I know it's fun to do the mental gymnastics of deciding whether or not Plato or Socrates or Jaden Smith or whoever else in your Philosophy 101 text would agree with your logical conclusion that punching Nazis is bad because violence is not the answer, but no one cares. You are under no obligation to hear a Nazi out. But Akila, what if they aren't actually Nazis? Anyone who thinks Hitler had mostly good ideas and argues that there was any silver lining to the tragic, unimaginable horrors done unto Jews during the Holocaust can catch these hands. Half the reason the Holocaust went unchecked for as long as it did was because of this lamentable desire for social loafing, where they'd rather be polite or peaceful to monsters instead of shutting them down forcefully. It's not like every person in Germany in the early 1940s was a Nazi. It's just that the good people decided it wasn't worth the trouble to fight back against the fascist, racist, anti-Semitism as it gained traction in their country. Well, guess what? It's not 1940 anymore. We won't sit back quietly while you Heil Hitler with your pathetic Nazi youth haircut. And be warned that if you are feeling froggy enough to spout this hate in public, you better be ready to jump.
In my personal life at the time this unfolded, I was embedded in a liberal arts community moonlighting as a musician. Soon I saw a flood of support for the idea that yes, it was okay to punch a Nazi. I got a frightening sense immediately. I had been friends with many leftists over the years and knew that many of them viewed most of the Democratic Party as right-wing, just less so than the Republicans. I knew that the definition of Nazi to them was amorphous, but I naively thought that perhaps I could reason with them about some of the ambiguity in what they were vocally supporting. You're saying it's okay to punch a Nazi. I get that desire. I detest Nazis too, I would start. But there is a very delicate issue at hand. If you say it's okay, that means someone has the right. If someone has the right, that right needs to be clearly defined. Is this an individual right? Do 300 million people each have the right to punch the exact same Nazi? Is the right allocated one Nazi punch per person? Is it limited to a single day, or does the right renew every day? Is there an official arbitration panel designated where the accused has the right to face their accuser and have a jury decide? But even then, I continued, I understand the cathartic feeling one might have in punching the Nazi, but the Nazi is still a Nazi after the punch. He's just now a punched Nazi. You didn't stop him from being a Nazi. There is only one way to make sure that the Nazi stops being a Nazi, and that is to kill the Nazi. Without realizing that now and calling it out, that's the only place I can see this leading. I quickly learned that the time I spent attempting to reason with people I had known for years simply became evidence in their minds that I was a Nazi sympathizer at a minimum. It's quite curious you seem so animated about protecting Nazis. Suddenly, I had the strongest feeling of my life that I was surrounded by sociopaths.
Those violent protests erupting overnight at UC Berkeley. The campus locked down as more than 1,000 people rallied against the appearance of a controversial editor from Breitbart, Milo Yiannopoulos. The clashes escalated, the speech was canceled, and just moments ago, President Trump did weigh in again. ABC's Kana Warworth is on the scene in Berkeley with all the latest. Good morning, Kana.
And George, good morning. It was a terrifying night. Campus police issuing a shelter-in-place order after college Republicans invited Milo Yiannopoulos to speak. Now, behind me, this is a police generator that was knocked over and set on fire when these protests turned into a riot. Overnight mayhem on campus. The University of California, Berkeley erupting in flames as over 1,000 came out to protest an appearance by the self-described right-wing internet troll Milo Yiannopoulos.
We will not tolerate racism or sexism or hate crimes and violence. He's a fascist, and Berkeley did not welcome him.
At least 6 people were injured, including this Trump supporter who was pepper sprayed. The university canceling the speech.
Hey, Milo, we shot you down!
Riot police even retreating to the building for safety. You can hear them urging the crowds to leave.
I think we have a right to say that we don't want him here. And
the standoff intensifying as protesters lit fireworks, police firing back.
It's going too far right now. This is uncalled for. It's not going to get no message across.
Yiannopoulos, an editor for Breitbart News and an avid supporter of President Trump, responding on Facebook, posting this video.
Because they're so threatened by the idea that a conservative speaker might be persuasive and interesting and funny and might take some people with him. They just have to shut it down at all costs.
The latest developments in the shooting of a Republican congressman and others at a baseball practice outside of Washington. They were gearing up for the annual matchup between the GOP and the Democrats, a tradition more than a century old and one of the last remaining realms of bipartisanship in D.C. But today, a vicious attack. Today, 2 American institutions literally under fire: our national pastime and our elected officials. A barrage of gunfire at a baseball field right outside Washington, D.C., as Republican members of Congress practiced for their annual game against the Democrats. Law enforcement officers shouting at the suspect. 66-year-old James T. Hodgkinson, who had opened fire on the players, apparently deliberately targeting the GOP. 6 people injured, including Congressman Steve Scalise, the third-ranking Republican in the House of Representatives, now in critical condition. The suspect, now dead, had a long and public history of anti-Trump and anti-Republican rhetoric. The questions tonight: what exactly was his motive, and why now?
The shooting happened during a large political debate over health care. It is said that Hodgkinson was very animated about the topic. Just before the shooting, on May 4, 2017, San Francisco Gate, the digital home of the San Francisco Chronicle, published a widely read editorial, "All the Ways Republicans Want You Dead." Even if Hodgkinson's motivations were not strictly due to the healthcare debate, many expressed that his actions were reasonable. On the day of the shooting, Huffington Post writer Jesse Benz said, "For violent resistance to work, it would need to be organized. Individual acts can be understandable, but likely counterproductive, ineffective." Journalist and editor of the magazine The New Inquiry, which The New Yorker hailed as one of the rare publications that has succeeded in becoming an intellectual journal that can draw people in, that poses large theoretical questions without sliding back into the Iron Mountain of academia, said, "If the shooter has a serious health condition, then is taking potshots at the GOP House leadership considered self-defense?" On MSNBC, Joy Reid was quick to remind people that while Steve Scalise maybe shouldn't be shot, he was still a bad person, so people shouldn't forget that.
And I think it's so important to keep that, that in mind, because it is one thing to sort of want civility and to take umbrage when it's one of your friends, when it's one of your own colleagues. But like you said, there's a whole country out there, and a lot of people, at least in my Twitter timeline, and it's a delicate thing because obviously everybody is wishing the congressman well and hoping that he recovers.
Sure.
But Steve Scalise has a history that we've all been forced to sort of ignore on race. He did come to leadership after some controversy over attending a white nationalist event, which he says he didn't know what it was. He also co-sponsored a bill to amend the Constitution to define marriages between a man and a woman. He voted for the House health care bill, which, as you said, would gut health care for millions of people, including 3 million children. And he co-sponsored a bill to repeal the ban on semi-automatic weapons. Because he is in jeopardy and everyone is pulling for him, are we required in a moral sense to put that aside at the moment?
What we're required to say is we hope he recovers, and then when he recovers, there's a renewed mindset. If a lesbian person saved your life, you should not go forward, being homophobic. You shouldn't be it anyway. If you almost died, but your life was saved because you got health care, then you should apply that ethic and want everybody else the same health care you have.
July 5th, 2017, CNN. How CNN found the Reddit user behind the Trump wrestling gif. The Reddit user who initially claimed credit for President Donald Trump's tweet that showed Trump tackling CNN issued an apology Tuesday for the video and other offensive content he posted. One day after CNN identified the man behind the account and attempted to make contact with him. Reddit user Han Asshole Solo first shared the GIF last Wednesday of Trump pummeling a wrestler with CNN's logo imposed on his face. CNN could find no earlier instance of the GIF. The GIF was later edited into a video with sound and tweeted by the president on Sunday. On Reddit, Han Asshole Solo took credit for the inspiring tweet. Soon after, Han Asshole Solo's other posts on Reddit, some of which included racist and anti-Semitic imagery, quickly circulated on social media. Now the user is apologizing, writing in a lengthy post on Reddit that he does not advocate violence against the press and expressing remorse there in an interview with CNN for other posts he made that were racist and anti-Semitic. The apology came after CNN's K-file identified the man behind Han Asshole Solo. Using identifying information that Han Asshole Solo posted on Reddit, K-file was able to determine key biographical details, to find the man's name using a Facebook search, and ultimately corroborate details he had made available via Reddit. On Monday, K-file attempted to contact the man by email and phone, but he did not respond. On Tuesday, Han Asshole Solo posted his apology on the subreddit The Donald and deleted all of his other posts. First of all, I would like to apologize to the members of the Reddit community for getting this site and this sub embroiled in a controversy that would have never have happened. He wrote, "I would also like to apologize for the posts that were racist, bigoted, and anti-Semitic. I am in no way this kind of person. I love and accept people of all walks of life and have done so my entire life. I am not the person that the media portrays me to be in real life. I was trolling and posting things to get a reaction from the subs on Reddit and never meant any of the hateful things I said in those posts. I would never support any kind of violence or actions against others simply for what they believe in, their religion, or the lifestyle they choose to have. Nor would I carry out any violence against anyone based upon that, or support anyone who did. The user further apologized for calls for violence against the press in his statement on Reddit. The meme was created as purely satire. It was not meant to be a call for violence against CNN or any other news affiliation. He wrote, I had no idea anyone would take it and put it in sound to it and then have it put up on the president's Twitter feed. It was a prank, nothing more. What the president's feed showed was not the original post that was posted here, but loaded up somewhere else and sound added to it and then sent out on Twitter. I thought it was the original post that I made, and that's why I took credit. I have the highest respect for the journalist community, and they put their lives on the line every day with the jobs that they do in reporting the news. The apology has since been taken down by the moderators of the Donald subreddit. After posting his apology, Han Asshole Solo called CNN's K-File and confirmed his identity. In the interview, Han Asshole Solo sounded nervous about his identity being revealed and asked to not be named out of fear for his personal safety and for the public embarrassment it would bring him and his family. CNN is not publishing Han Asshole Solo's name because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he's taken down all of his offending posts, and because he said he's not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. In addition, he said his statement could serve as an example to others not to do the same. CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. August 16, 2017. In a thread on Twitter covering the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally, Jake Tapper wrote, at least 2 journalists in Charlottesville were assaulted by people protesting the Klan Nazi alt-right rally. Taylor Lorenz is one. The alleged assailant of the journalist was charged. A photojournalist with the Richmond CBS station was also assaulted while filming a counter-protest. He needed medical attention. A source at the station says he's been out for 3 days with a concussion. Antifa posted this on Facebook about the assault, which a source at the station says is full of out-and-out lies. These are unprovoked assaults on journalists doing their jobs by those marching against the hateful racists. Disgusting. At the same time, Chris Cuomo and scores of others began posting photos of a D-Day with the caption, anti-fascist disrupting a large gathering of white supremacists. August 26, 2017. Washington Post. Black-clad Antifa members attack peaceful right-wing demonstrators in Berkeley. Their faces hidden behind black bandanas and hoodies, about 100 anarchist and Antifa anti-fascist members barreled into a protest Sunday afternoon in Berkeley's Martin Luther King Jr. Civic Center Park. Jumping over plastic and concrete barriers, the group melted into a larger crowd of around 2,000 that had marched peacefully throughout the sunny afternoon for a rally against hate gathering. Shortly after, violence began to flare. A pepper spray-wielding Trump supporter was smacked to the ground with homemade shields. Another was attacked by 5 black-clad Antifa members, each windmilling kicks and punches into a man desperately trying to protect himself. A conservative group leader retreated for safety behind a line of riot police as marchers chucked water bottles, shot off pepper spray, and screamed, "Fascist, go home." All told, the Associated Press reported at least 5 individuals were attacked. An AP reporter witnessed the assaults. Berkeley Police's Lieutenant Joe Oakes told the Washington Post the rally resulted in 13 arrests on a range of charges including assault with a deadly weapon, obstructing a police officer, and various Berkeley Municipal Code violations. And although the anti-hate and left-wing protesters largely drowned out the smaller clutch of far-right marchers attending a planned No to Marxism in America rally, Sunday's confrontation marked another street brawl between opposing ends of the political spectrum, violence that has become a regular feature of the Trump years and gives signs of a spiraling upward, particularly in the wake of the violence of Charlottesville. September 16, 2017, Washington Post. A professor called students future dead cops. Now he's suspended. A New York professor drew ire from city university administrators and law enforcement officials because of a tweet in which he said teaching future dead cops is a privilege. Michael Isaacson, an adjunct professor at CUNY's John Jay College of Criminal Justice, was placed on administrative leave because of the 3-week-old tweet, which appears to have recently caught the attention of the college's president and New York City's largest police union. In a tweet on August 23rd, Isaacson, who teaches economics, said, "Some of y'all might think it sucks being an anti-fascist teaching at John Jay College, but I think it's a privilege to teach future dead cops." In a statement Friday, John Jay College President Carol V. Mason called Isaacson's comments abhorrent and the antithesis of an academic institution that trains future law enforcement. While she said that professors have the right of free speech and academic freedom, expressions of hate or intimidation are not welcome in civil discourse. This adjunct expressed personal views that are not consistent with our college's well-known firm values and principles and my own personal standards and principles. I am appalled that anyone associated with John Jay, with our proud history of supporting law enforcement authorities, would suggest that violence against police is ever acceptable, Mason said. Outside of the Washington Post article, Isaacson tweeted, "If you like Assata Shakur on the condition that she actually was framed and didn't kill that cop, you don't actually like Assata Shakur." September 15th, 2017, CNN. Ben Shapiro spoke at Berkeley as protesters gathered outside. As conservative radio host Ben Shapiro spoke at the University of California, Berkeley, protesters swarmed outside chanting various slogans. Police stood in full riot gear, standing guard as the school took extensive security measures, shutting down surrounding buildings and setting up a large perimeter around the hall where Shapiro gave a speech and answered questions Thursday night. The school was facing a critical test on whether it could prevent violence from breaking out. The protests appeared mostly peaceful, although CNN witnessed a scuffle between a Shapiro supporter and another woman. Berkeley police said there were no reported injuries due to violence and no reports of any damage to property as the crowd swelled to nearly 1,000 people. Police arrested 9 people outside the event, according to Berkeley Police and Alameda County Sheriff's Office. At least 3 of those people were taken into custody for carrying banned weapons. Officials had hoped to avoid the kind of violence that erupted on campus when right-wing commentator Milo Yiannopoulos came to speak in February. Protesters caused $100,000 worth of damage to the public university when they threw fireworks, rocks, and Molotov cocktails on campus, forcing the event to be canceled. The university blamed 150 masked agitators for some of the violence, during which some conservatives were attacked.
I've been spending my entire career standing up against fascism and the idea of an overreaching government that uses the power of the gun in order to compel people to do what they want. Antifa is fascist. I am not a fascist.
We're having a nonviolent speak out against white supremacy, misogyny, xenophobia, and fascism. Students and community members have a free speech right to speak out against the fascism that is on the rise in this country.
Nobody wants to interfere with your free speech rights, but we have to balance those rights against the right of our students, our staff, and our faculty to have safety and security.
I saw a lot of headlines on the way here about how it was going to cost $600,000 in security for this event. And that is not due to me. I mean, I'm not the one out threatening to break windows. It's not due to you. You're here listening. It's due to the Antifa hard left morons who are out there breaking windows. And I do want to say one thing, which is that in a city as left as Berkeley, if you're going to blame me for the $600,000 in spending on security, you're all Keynesians. Think of all the jobs I just created.
It's disproportionately targeted at conservatives, libertarians, Trump supporters, and you name it. I don't even think it's a question or a debate around that topic. Colleges have become a place where they want everyone to look different and think the same, where there's a disproportionate amount of people at the top that are targeting conservatives, blocking speakers that they disagree with, and they're advancing an agenda that, quite frankly, is very far to the left. And our organization, Turning Point USA, we not only fight for our ideas, free markets and smaller government, but now we are fighting for free speech. We have to say it's okay to hear something that you disagree with. You don't have to run into a safe space because you hear something you disagree with. And I'm perfectly okay with a socialist having the right to be wrong. I'm perfectly okay with a leftist speaker to come on campus and to tell why they think those ideas are better. And the question I'm going to pose throughout this whole discussion is, why is it that it's always the leftist activists rioting and protesting and storming stages and pulling fire alarms, and us conservatives, we sit quietly when we hear things we disagree with, and then we then go back and we say, wait a second, why are you shouting our speakers down and you're rioting and protesting violently on college campuses?
Senator Rand Paul, who ran for president last year, is recovering at a home
from a brutal attack that resulted in 5 broken ribs.
And police say his next-door neighbor is the alleged attacker. KCAL 9 political reporter Dave Bryan joins us now with the very latest on this. Dave.
This is a bizarre case, to say the least. One of the questions is really what was behind all of this? Nobody seems to know yet. It's not clear exactly how long Senator Paul may be bedridden and unable to travel with his injuries, but with the Republican leadership in Congress pushing for quick approval of the GOP tax reform plan, the senator's injuries could become a political problem for the tax agenda. Meanwhile, the big mystery tonight is what was the motive for the attack on Senator Paul?
New details today on the incident that left Senator Rand Paul with 6 broken ribs. This might be one of my favorite stories, although, of course, we don't want to. Clearly, Senator Paul is still struggling.
February 9th, 2018, Washington Post. Who knew libertarians were so sensitive? Lawmaker won't apologize for Rand Paul crack. There was bipartisan support Thursday night on essentially one issue: for Rand Paul to quiet down, as the Libertarian held the Senate at bay into Friday morning to protest an estimated $320 billion being added to the national debt under a bipartisan budget deal. Representative Charlie Dent and outspoken liberal actress Bette Midler both made quips that referenced a physical attack made in November against the Republican senator from Kentucky. When Rand Paul pulls a stunt like this, it is very easy to understand why it's difficult to be Rand Paul's next-door neighbor, Dent said Thursday night. In a message posted to Twitter, Midler made a similar comment about the same time. Where's Rand Paul's neighbor when we need him? Outside of the Washington Post reporting, Huffington Post writer Matt Fuller tweeted during the filibuster, "Tonight, everyone in the Senate is Rand Paul's aggrieved neighbor." September 25th, 2018, Washington Post. Ted Cruz and wife are shouted out of D.C. restaurant over his support for Kavanaugh. Heidi Cruz stood frozen in the middle of the restaurant, hands clenched beneath her shawl, teeth bared in what might have started as a grin before it changed to something else. Senator Ted Cruz had not yet removed his overcoat. He and his wife had not yet reached their table, which sat set and ready for them just a few paces away. A cream-cushioned booth, as reserved. But the Cruzes had not ordered all this chanting. "We believe survivors! We believe survivors!" sang the crowd that had materialized around the couple. There were perhaps a dozen of them. A moment earlier, they had been any other patrons at Foyola, a $145 set-price Italian restaurant a mile from the U.S. Senate building. Now they were a Monday night flash mob with cell phone cameras. "Hi," said a woman behind one of the cameras, stretching the syllable. "I'd love to talk to you about Brett Kavanaugh tonight." The woman was addressing the senator, not his wife. The two men are known to be old friends. More pertinent, Ted Cruz is a Republican on the Senate's Judiciary Committee, and Kavanaugh is a Supreme Court nominee whose confirmation process has been interrupted by allegations that he sexually assaulted one woman and engaged in sexual misconduct with another as a teenager. Lawyer Michael Navenati has said he represented a third woman, but she has not yet come forward. The chanting never stopped. "We believe survivors!" The organizers of this protest would later identify themselves as members of various left-wing organizations, a local anti-fascist group and a branch of Democratic Socialists of America, among others. On September 26, 2018, Rachel Maddow aired allegations by Michael Avenatti, former attorney currently incarcerated in federal prison, originally sentenced to 135 months for felony fraud and extortion, that accused Justice Kavanaugh of being a serial gang rapist.
If you have not seen this already and you don't know what I'm about to say, I will tell you there's a chance that you might not want to hear this, which is me warning you that you might want to mute me or distract the kids if they're watching with you, if you don't want to hear this or if you don't want your kids to hear this. But I'm going to read it. And actually, before I even read it to you, I will tell you tonight in advance that Judge Kavanaugh has this evening denied the implication of what Mr. Avenatti spells out here. But this is what he spells out here. Quote, this is a letter to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Quote, "We are aware of significant evidence of multiple house parties in the Washington, D.C. area during the early 1980s, during which Brett Kavanaugh, Mark Judge, and others would participate in the targeting of women with alcohol/drugs in order to allow a, quote, train of men to subsequently gang rape them. There are multiple witnesses that will corroborate these facts, and each of them must be called to testify publicly. As a starting point, Senate investigators should pose the following questions to Judge Kavanaugh. Number one, did you ever target one or more women for sex or rape at a house party? Did you ever assist Mark Judge or others in doing so? Number two, did you ever attend any house party during which a woman was gang raped or used for sex by multiple men? Number 3, did you ever witness a line of men outside a bedroom at any house party where you understood a woman was in the bedroom being raped or taken advantage of? Number 4, did you ever participate in any sexual conduct with a woman at a house party whom you understood to be intoxicated or under the influence of drugs? Number 5, did you ever communicate with Mark Judge or anyone else about your participation in a, quote, train involving an intoxicated woman? And number 6, did you ever object or attempt to prevent one or more men from participating in the rape or taking advantage of a woman at any house party? Please note that we will provide additional evidence relating to the above conduct, both to the committee and the American public, in the coming days.
On September 28th, as mobs continued to hound senators to pressure their votes, convinced that Brett Kavanaugh was a serial gang rapist, Ian Millhiser, an American legal journalist and senior correspondent for Vox, at the time worked for Think Progress as a columnist and as a senior constitutional policy analyst at the Center for American Progress, wrote on Twitter, "Tell me again why we shouldn't confront Republicans where they eat, where they sleep, and where they work until they stop being complicit in the destruction of our democracy."
Meanwhile, I want to go now to a colleague of ours, Tucker Carlson, and something that happened outside of his Washington, D.C. home last night, Howie. A mob chanting threats outside of his family home, at which time his wife was home. What more do we know about this, Howie?
Well, first of all, I just think this is reprehensible. And I would say that whether it was Tucker Carlson's house or Jim Acosta's house, whether you agree with Tucker or not, this was an organized effort to harass and, yes, I think to threaten Tucker Carlson and his family. His door ended up being cracked. His address was published to encourage other things like this. I don't understand why people don't get arrested for things like this. And I think it's incumbent on those on the left to denounce this sort of conduct. We saw the beginnings of this when Trump administration officials were refused service in various restaurants. This is not okay. Somebody is going to get hurt. And I think whatever side, whatever your political opinions are, we can't condone this kind of thing, no matter who the target is, left, right, or center.
Tucker Carlson gave an interview to the Washington Post shortly after he was at work at the time his wife was home. He said he's used to being confronted in public and has no interest in playing the role of a victim, but he said his wife and his 4 children should not have to be exposed to this aggression while they are in the privacy of their own home.
Don't drag families into this. Don't drag children into this. There are many, many ways to register your dissent. Going to somebody's house and attacking the door and screaming and scaring the family. I mean, that just should be considered completely and totally unacceptable. And I'm really starting to get worried about this. And I would say, again, say the same thing no matter what the political persuasion of the target is. This is not what should go on in America.
Horrible thing for anybody to feel unsafe in their own home. Howie Kurtz, thank you very much.
Thanks, Sandra.
Washington Times, November 8th, 2018. Matthew Iglesias blames Tucker Carlson for Antifa mob that terrified Fox News' star's wife. Fox Media co-founder Matthew Iglesias told readers Thursday that an Antifa mob that surrounded the home of Fox News' Tucker Carlson was, for all intents and purposes, incited by the conservative pundit. The website's senior correspondent told Twitter followers that he cannot empathize with Mr. Carlson's wife. She was home alone when the mob of activists from Smash Racism DC converged on their home and chanted, "Tucker Carlson, we will fight, we know where you sleep at night." Video of the incident, which was accompanied by the hashtag #KnockKnockTucker, was removed from Twitter and the group's account was suspended. Another video included, "Racist scumbag leave town. I honestly cannot empathize with Tucker Carlson's wife at all. I agree that protesting at her house was tactically unwise and shouldn't be done, but I am utterly unable to identify with her plight on any level," Mr. Iglesias started a string of tweets. Mr. Iglesias went on to imply that supporters of the Carlsons were motivated by racism for empathizing with them rather than illegal immigrants terrorized by ICE. I think the idea behind terrorizing his family, like it or not as a strategy, is to make them feel some of the fear that the victims of MAGA-inspired violence feel thanks to the nonstop racial incitement coming from Tucker, Trump, etc. I agree that this is probably not tactically sound, but if your instinct is to empathize with the fear of the Carlson family rather than with the fear of his victims, then you should take a moment to reflect on why that is. July 1st, 2019. New York Times. In Portland, milkshakes, a punch, and hashtag him too refresh police criticism. It was by now a familiar scene of summer street warfare in Portland. Conservative marchers, this time pushing a #HimToo message, in one of the nation's most progressive cities, faced down a rowdy group of anti-fascist protesters. Soon the tensions escalated, with a black-clad activist striking the conservative journalist Andy Ngo in the face, while others slimed him with what protesters said were vegan coconut milkshakes. Mr. Ngo was left bloodied and obviously shaken, reporting the attack in a video live-streamed to his more than 140,000 Twitter followers when a city medic arrived to check on him. "Where the hell were all of you?" Mr. Ngo demanded. By Monday morning, the case was reverberating around the country through conservative circles where prominent leaders were asking the same question. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, called for a federal investigation, declaring without evidence that officials in Oregon's largest city were allowing the violence as a result of their own liberal sympathies. A Portland State University professor called the impeaching of the city's Democratic mayor Ted Wheeler. Fueling the conservative alarm was the Portland Police Bureau's own suggestion on Twitter during the height of the protests, later walked back slightly, that anti-fascist protesters had laced their milkshakes with quick-drying cement before lobbing them at the marchers. With political polarization on the rise, the nation's fraught conversations over immigration, race, and policing are increasingly being held in tense street showdowns punctuated with eggs, bricks, and lately milkshakes. Portland's long history of street activism has made a city central stage for many of those conflicts. This weekend's protests left the police department facing unusual criticism that it had not only been slow to halt violence, but with its questionable claim about cement milkshakes, had dramatically fueled the furor. Mr. Ngo is an independent journalist in the Portland area who works with the online magazine Quillette, a publication which prides itself on taking dangerous ideas, in some cases writing about genetic notions of race, in others about the shortfalls of feminism. Mr. Ngo had also written for the Wall Street Journal, including an opinion piece in 2018 highlighting the prominent displays of Muslim identity as an example of failed multiculturalism in London. He has a history of battling with anti-fascist groups, with the two sides sharing a mutual antipathy that dates back many months. The conservative journalist has built a prominent presence in part by going into situations where there may be conflict and then publicizing the results. Before Saturday's event, anti-fascist organizers had mentioned him by name. Mr. Ngo had written on social media that he was worried about the event. "He's a political pundit who certainly makes the most out of his conflicts, which sometimes turn violent on him," said Brian Levin, the director of the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism at California State University in San Bernardino. But to his credit, I've never seen him be the physical aggressor in the posts that he's made generally. Outside of that New York Times article, Samantha Kuttner, featured in Rolling Stone, is a researcher of violent extremism who calls herself the Proud Boy Whisperer, often promotes the availability of milkshakes actively on Twitter to Antifa protesters, with full awareness of how the milkshakes were being utilized. According to her bio on ProudBoyWhisperer.com, Samantha Kuttner received her bachelor's degree in psychology and master's degree in communication studies from the University of Nevada, Reno. She studies violent extremism and the gender dynamics of radicalization. In 2018, she won a Research Integrity Award for her Institutional Review Board and for persisting against the chilling effect. As an independent consultant, she provides training presentations informed by her ethnographic research with Proud Boys and anti-fascists. Her current project is the Proud Boys Incident Map and Dashboard, a continually developing OSINT resource to inform the public of Proud Boy activity in America, Canada, Australia, and the UK. In 2019, Samantha Kuttner confronted Charlie Kirk at a TPUSA event.
Would a white supremacist organization host a black leadership summit?
Yes. You can be...
Would a white supremacist organization have a black female communications director for over a year?
Yes, there are ideological shields. Yes, there are ideological shields that further your talking points and who are every much as committed to bigotry and white supremacy.
Would a white supremacist organization host the nation's largest young Latino leadership summit for 5 years straight?
Yes.
Can you name one instance when we have ever tolerated hatred once?
When you have ever tolerated hatred?
Yes.
Well, you claim that your organization is not white nationalist and not white supremacist. So why did Identity Europa think that your organization was prime breeding grounds for their views?
Because they're idiots.
Because they're idiots. So wait. No, discussion with you, right? Because I do agree that you should look in the mirror first before asking people to solve your problems. Just tell me honestly, what do you think it is about your organization, without you being a white supremacist, without you being a white nationalist?
So you don't think I'm a white supremacist? Let's just get this straight.
No.
Okay, good.
I think you enable it.
Oh, I enable.
Yes.
Despite every time I encounter anyone around that ideology, I repudiate it and I reject it.
I'm asking you
what
why
else
you
would
feel,
you want me to do?
I'm asking you why you feel that what it is you think about your organization that might attract white supremacists and white nationalists, because you've repudiated a lot of members who were later revealed to have white
First
nationalist
of all,
ties.
it's not a lot of members. You're talking about 4 people in a membership organization with hundreds of thousands of students over 7.5-year history. You're looking at 4 isolated examples that the dishonest press decides to look at, despite the unbelievable body of work that Turning Point USA rejects anyone that has hatred. Turning Point USA has diverse leadership summits, such as a Black Leadership Summit, and you kind of lost me after that one, by the way, that you could host a Black Leadership Summit and also be white supremacist.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not generally speaking unruly, but fires have been started, and there's a crowd that.
But one thing that worries me about the anti-left attitude, as opposed to the conservative attitude, and I think that you need both, right? Conservatism is anti-left because it's conservative, not just because anti-left is anti-left, is something that you've come up against, and that is the gatekeeper problem. So there are a lot of people who consider themselves anti-left who also happen to believe atrociously awful things.
Yeah, and you and I have both denounced them publicly and at events and all that.
Right. So where's the line drawn between what is appropriate behavior in fighting the left and what is inappropriate behavior in fighting the left?
Great question. That's where morals come in, right? That's where we have to say, we don't believe, you don't believe this and I don't believe this, one race is better than the other. Like, I don't believe that America should be, by any means, any sort of exercise in a racial majoritarian experiment. That's not who we are. It never has been. I mean, the phrase e pluribus unum is part of the American Trinity. E pluribus unum, in God we trust, and liberty. And so here's where I make the argument in the MAGA doctrine. And so you have conservative values, incorporated anti-leftism and populism, right? But let's take it to a further extent, which is and President Trump has denounced the hatred. He has denounced the vile, insidious nonsense that is out there. And he's gotten more forceful and he's gotten more ahead of it as time has gone on. Because unfortunately, they're a minority of a minority, but they're out there and they have real hatred for certain individuals. And I'm not going to say any names, but that's just how it is. And I go up on college campus sometimes, I get questions that are horrible about Jewish individuals, and horrible, horrible things. And I denounce them and I fight back against it. However, that's where it comes into our moral position and our conservative position of the belief in the American Trinity. But if you take it to a further extent, right, if we're nothing but just conservatism on a chalkboard, right, and we're nothing but just always saying we're in a free trade with everyone always, well, what's the extent of that, right? So the inverse would be, what if we take the other too far and we allow the rise of China to be too much? And I can make the argument that H.W. Bush and Clinton, so on and so forth, allowed that other extreme to happen. And so that's where I think President Trump has balanced it. I really do. We have the healthy dose of anti-leftism, populism, and conservatism. However, when that hatred comes up and it rears its ugly head, we have a moral obligation as conservatives to kick out the demons in our own ranks. And it's something the left will never do. They never, ever exercise the demons in their own ranks. In fact, they embrace them.
One of the areas where you've obviously come under a lot of criticism on campus is from this specific group that we're talking about. This has become a headline-worthy issue when they tried to do the same thing to Donald Trump Jr. and Kimberly Guilfoyle. And they've been approaching you on campus. And the specific criticisms, aside from the sort of just plain racism of it, seem to be that you're too socially liberal. So what is your perspective on?
Well, look, I believe marriage is one man, one woman. I believe in biblical marriage. I always have. And I also have people that are gay on my staff, and I'm not afraid to share the stage with people that are gay. Other individuals think, and they have said this, that gay people do not have a position in the conservative movement. I believe that is wrong. I believe that Dave Rubin and Peter Thiel and Tammy Bruce have a place in the conservative movement. I absolutely do. And I think it's so backwards that they would believe that we should somehow grow the influence of the conservative movement by the process of subtraction of people that are turned off by the left, turned off by woke culture of the left. Somehow they believe that the conservative movement should be closing its doors to people that all of a sudden might be interested in your podcast or your position or your speeches. I march at the March for Life. I am very, very pro-life against Planned Parenthood. I talk about it quite often. It's an unfair accusation against me. It just is. But I won't apologize for having people that are gay on my staff, sharing the stage with people that are gay, that have served our country and that are veterans. It's not something I'm going to apologize for a second for. And it doesn't compromise my Christianity, my moral positions on marriage, or my conservative beliefs.
May 28, 2020, NBC News. Minneapolis police precinct burns as George Floyd protests rage. CNN crew arrested. Police had cleared the 3rd precinct shortly after 10 p.m. when demonstrators forcibly entered and ignited several fires, department spokesman John Elder said. Mayor Jacob Frey said Friday in an early morning news conference that he had made the decision to pull the police out of the precinct. You know, brick and mortar is not as important in life, he said. He called the vandalism and arson unacceptable, but vowed the police officers would still patrol their community served by the 3rd precinct. We will continue to do our jobs in that area. Fires also burned on both sides of the police station as demonstrators pushed down temporary fencing and occupied property at the precinct. Officers fired tear gas from the ground and a rooftop. Other buildings nearby were also burning. The city of Minneapolis on Twitter urged people to retreat from the area as a precaution. We're hearing unconfirmed reports that gas lines to the 3rd precinct have been cut and other explosive materials are in the building. June 11th, 2020. The Guardian. Seattle protesters take over city blocks to create police-free autonomous zone. Hundreds of protesters have taken over several blocks of Seattle and transformed it into the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ, helping to amplify nationwide protests while offering real-world example of what a community can look like without police. For 3 days, protesters have filled several blocks and at least part of a park in the artsy Capitol Hill neighborhood of Seattle after police abandoned their East Precinct following dangerous clashes between protesters and law enforcement. I think what we're seeing in CHAZ is just a snippet of reality people can have, said Dae Sheik Kim Jr., 28, one of the many organizers at the site. I think what it's doing is exposing the unnecessary need for an over-policed state. The space has both a protest and street fair vibe, with a small garden, medic station, smoking area, and a no-cop co-op, where people can get supplies and food at no cost. There's also a trio of shrine-like areas filled with candles, flowers, and images of George Floyd and many others who have been killed by police. But in a tweet, Donald Trump described the protesters as domestic terrorists who have been taking over Seattle, run by radical left Democrats, and of course, law and order. In another tweet addressing the Seattle Mayor Jerry Durkin and the Washington Governor Jay Inslee, he told them to take back your city now. If you don't do it, I will. This is not a game, adding, these ugly anarchists must be stopped immediately. Move fast. June 12th, 2020, thestranger.com. Meet the farmer behind CHAZ's vegetable gardens. Of all the horrors emerging from the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, perhaps none is so menacing as the sight of a community garden full of tomato seedlings sprouting inside the coronavirus circles. Photos from the heart of the CHAZ show that someone has put dirt in the mode over circles, which were originally intended to promote social distancing, and that modest gardens are now arising in the spot that in a previous summer hosted movie nights. So who's responsible? Are they actually expecting to feed themselves on those crops? What does it have to do with Black Lives Matter? It was real organic, shrugs Marcus Henderson. I came here with a shovel. Marcus was the first to start gardening in the park, though he was quickly joined by friends and strangers. This isn't work of a casual amateur. Henderson has an energy resources engineering degree from Stanford University, a master's degree in sustainability in the urban environment, and years of experience working in sustainable agriculture. His Instagram shows him hard at work on various construction and gardening projects, and he's done community development at organic farms around the world. For Marcus, this was a perfect opportunity to put his experience to work for a cause. We're dealing with a question of how Black people have been disenfranchised for so long, pulled out of the economic system, he says. One way of doing that is not giving people access to land. Going all the way back to emancipation, he points out, farming has been an important way for Black people to gain autonomy and self-sufficiency, but Black land ownership, particularly in the farming sector, has dropped precipitously over the last century. In the 1920s, America had nearly 1 million Black-owned farms, but by 1970, it was down to less than 50,000. The gardens in Cal Anderson Park were crafted quickly but with expertise. A layer of cardboard smothered grass, which isn't particularly healthy crop for the environment, and diverse seedlings donated by neighbors are placed into holes in the cardboard that allow them to take root underground. Now, if only we could do the same to all the golf courses. Nobody expects the little Cal Anderson plots to be a sustainable source of food for all the protesters, but they're a demonstration of how land can be put to better use, and of the importance of land ownership for Black Americans. That idea has motivated much of Marcus's work. When he began his career, he was engaged with policy and planning, but soon saw that after he wanted to make real change, he'd have to get his hands dirty. His planning background is evident when you watch him work. During our conversation, volunteers continuously interrupted him to ask questions. Someone just brought compost. Where should it go? Marcus supplied instructions for containing it in tarps. A woman arrived and explained that she's been out of work for weeks and wanted to volunteer in her neighborhood. Where is she needed? He pointed her towards some watering cans. A bystander asked about creating green corridors throughout the city for pollinators. For the moment, that's beyond the scope of the installation. For now, Marcus says, he's taking the project one day at a time, aware that it could be uprooted at any moment by authorities. But he's also planning improvements, with planters that don't damage the ground and better watering systems. At the moment, their most urgent donation needs are for water barrels and other irrigation tools. All of the plants, tools, and dirt have been supplied by neighbors, with more donations arriving each day. Standing amidst the seedlings, surveying the little circles of life, Marcus seemed tired, amused, and also proud. I'm just a guy, he says, who's passionate about land. New York Times, June 29, 2020. Another fatal shooting in Seattle's CHOP protest zone. 2 teenagers have been shot, one fatally, in the 4th shooting in 10 days within the boundaries of the free protest zone set up near downtown Seattle amid a nationwide protest over police violence. The latest shooting around 3 a.m. on Monday has accelerated tensions over what happens next in the protest area, known as Capitol Hill Organized Protest Zone, or CHOP. One victim, age 16, arrived at Harborough Medical Center at 3:30 a.m. from the CHOP area, transported there by Seattle Fire Department medics, and died in the hospital. The other victim, 14, was taken to a hospital in a private vehicle and remained in critical condition in intensive care, said spokeswoman for Harborview. The violence, with a total of 6 people shot in an area previously known as a party corner in Seattle, noted for its bars, restaurants, and colorful student-infused street life, has raised new questions over what happens next. The first shooting occurred early in the morning on June 20th. A 19-year-old man was shot and transported to a hospital, where he was pronounced dead. A 33-year-old man was also shot nearby. The second shooting occurred the next day. A 17-year-old boy who was shot and treated at Harborview Medical Center and was released. 2 days later, the police said they were investigating yet another shooting in the city morning hours near the protest zone with 1 person injured. In a news briefing on Monday morning in the CHOP zone, Chief Chairman Best of the Seattle Police Department said that when the police arrived at the site after multiple 9/11 calls about the gunfire, they found a white Jeep Cherokee riddled with bullet holes and were told that 2 men had been inside. The investigation was immediately made more difficult, she said, by the fact that evidence had been compromised. It is abundantly clear to our detectives people had been in and out of the car after the shooting, she said. And so far, she said, residents and protesters who may have witnessed the shooting have not come forward. People are not being cooperative with our request to help.
Comedian Jimmy Kimmel last night made an interesting point in his monologue that's gotten a lot of attention today. So let me play that for you.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack? Yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo? Rest in peace, Wheezy.
Andy, I know he's making a joke, but what do you think about that? The idea that, the unvaccinated at this point are making a personal choice. And so why are precious hospital and ICU resources going to them over other gravely ill people in some cases?
This means war. That is where we are. We are at war with these people. These folks are evil.
There is an ultra-right MAGA contingent in this country that wants to overthrow the U.S. government.
It is a danger to our democracy. It is a danger to our way of life.
The MAGA movement is a threat.
The extremists that we're dealing with every single day, we've got to kill and confront that movement.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
Obviously, Republicans, I think, are the biggest threat to democracy. We don't separate right-wing extremists and Republican Party anymore.
This is literally what conservative white folks do when they don't get their way. They turn violent.
Today's GOP is no longer a political movement
It is a fascist movement.
And this is why it could be more dangerous than 1860 or the 1930s.
Clearly, this is a literally call to arms.
June 24th, 2022, NPR. Supreme Court overturns Roe v. Wade, ending right to abortion upheld for decades. In a historic and far-reaching decision, the U.S. Supreme Court officially reversed Roe v. Wade on Friday, declaring that the constitutional right to abortion, upheld nearly for half a century, no longer exists. Writing for the court majority, Justice Samuel Alito said that the 1973 Roe ruling and repeated subsequent high court decisions reaffirming Roe must be overruled because they were egregiously wrong, the arguments exceptionally weak, and so damaging that they amounted to an abuse of judicial authority. The decision, most of which was leaked in early May, means that the abortion rights will be rolled back in nearly half of the states immediately, with more restrictions likely to follow. For all practical purposes, abortion will not be available in large swaths of the country. The decision may well mean, too, that the court itself, as well as the abortion question, will become a focal point in the upcoming fall elections and the fall thereafter. Outside of the NPR article, scores of registered blue checks on Twitter. Back before Elon Musk purchased the company, when the blue check mark meant Twitter certified your voice was more authoritative than others, explicitly called for violence. Carlos Maza from Vox said, "Violence is a legitimate and appropriate response to oppression. The suffragettes planted bombs. Queer people threw bricks. Violence has always been a necessary and important part of social justice." Another blue check Twitter user said, "Every church must burn." Another blue check Twitter user said, "As they say in Haiti, constitutions are made of paper, bayonets are made of steel." Another said, "Burn down the Supreme Court." The band Eve 6 retweeted another blue check who said, "Men, now is the time to listen to women as they give you careful instructions on how to build a pipe bomb." Another blue check tweeted an image that said, "How I defeated fascism with the power of love." Chapter 1, The Power of Love. The first step in my journey was realizing it is impossible to defeat fascism with the power of love. Chapter 2, The Power of Incredible Violence.
Yesterday we learned that a 26-year-old man took a taxi to Justice Brett Kavanaugh's Maryland home, where he was arrested in the early morning for threatening to kill Kavanaugh and was taken into custody. There's a lot of details to go over, so here's what we know. Nicholas John Roski, that's the suspect, told police he was angry over the leaked opinion on Roe v. Wade and also the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas.
A flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights. That sacred flame still burns. Now in our time, as we build an America that is more prosperous, free, and just. That is the work of my presidency, a mission I believe in with my whole soul. But first, we must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic. That the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans. And that is a threat to this country. These are hard things, but I'm an American president, not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America. And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself. MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, to the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
This is an NBC News special report. Here's Jose Diaz-Balart.
Good evening. We are coming on the air with breaking news. There has been an incident at Donald Trump's Pennsylvania rally. It appears shots have apparently been fired and Donald Trump has been injured. I'm going to pause to let you see the video as it played out.
That chart's a couple of months old, and if you want to really see something that's said, take a look at what happened.
Those one shot at greatness to be mentioned in the history books, and you missed the shot?
I haven't even had a second to process. You're telling me somebody finally had the balls to bring a pew-pew, and he missed! We were a second away! We were a centimeter away from half of the problem being gone, and you missed!
I'm not saying that I will ever try to assassinate a presidential candidate. All I'm saying is that if I went through all of that trouble, I wouldn't miss. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Carla. Happy birthday to you. Make a wish, Canada. Don't miss Trump next time.
I just want to say I'm a transgender male. What age should kids be able to get things like hormone therapy? Because I don't know what's true, what's not.
Tell me, are you comfortable telling me your story?
I've known that since like 3rd grade, and I'm currently 19, almost 20. I've known basically since then. I didn't start going by like a different name until 7th and 8th grade. I just don't know, like, with the whole medical stuff, like what's true, what's not, what's helpful, because I've heard so many different opinions.
First of all, thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
So I'm going to have an opinion that very few people will ever tell you, which is I want you to be very cautious putting drugs into your system in the pursuit of changing your body.
Mm-hmm.
I instead encourage you to work on what's going on in your brain first. I think what you need first and foremost is just a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
Just someone that is going to listen to what you've gone through, listen to what else is going on. My prayer for you, and again, very few people will say this, I actually want to see you be comfortable in how you were born.
Yeah.
I know that you might not feel that way, but I think that is something that you can achieve. I think that with the right team and the right people, you don't have to wage war on your body. You can learn to love your body.
Last year you said something about DEI, unqualified black pilots. You see a pilot on a black pilot. Don't you think it was an irresponsible statement suggesting that maybe these pilots aren't qualified or unqualified?
No. But I'll tell you exactly what I said and why I said it.
Okay, go ahead.
I said, the pretext, I went through a whole windup. I said United Airlines is saying that they want 40% of all their pilots to be people of color or women. We have learned that we have relaxed standards anytime that we try to reach racial quotas. Anytime we reach racial quotas, we relax the standards. Standards for air traffic control, professors, or college admissions. Therefore, when it comes to pilots or surgeons, if I see somebody who is black, as I said on the show, I'm going to hope that person is qualified. That's what I said, which of course is legitimate, because they're begging the question, we're not hiring based on merit anymore. We're hiring based on race. So when you see a black pilot, you wonder, boy, is that person there because they earned it or because they were placed there? That's what DEI does. It makes you ask questions you otherwise would not ask.
So
are you? What a beautiful kid that is.
Thank you.
What a gift from God.
Much.
Yeah.
She truly is. She is the biggest blessing. Something that kind of has me like on the fence of whether or not I go kind of like full blown more like conservative or moderate is just seeing how high.
Give it up. That is a gift from the Lord, everybody. That is just beautiful.
I see that, we're starting to save a lot of money from things such as like Doge, but do you think that some of that money should go back to maybe like reforming the way that welfare is done to help poor families who do want to kind of pursue that American dream?
Great question. The number one objective of any social welfare program should be, how do we keep the family together and put dads back in the family? Unfortunately, in the black community, dads are the most absent of any community. About 2/3 of all black youth will be raised without a stable father around. And I know it's crazy, right? And that little precious angel of yours deserves to have a father around. And unfortunately, as we've removed dads from families, government has come in and has taken the place. So some people need help and they need social assistance. All of that should be about incentivizing the dad staying around, not the dad leaving. The Democrat Party does not talk about dads at all. The Republican Party, we are talking about how men need to be men again, in the home, take responsibility, provide for your family, and with strong families comes smaller government and a better country. Thank you guys for a respectful conversation, even though we see things very differently. And if you're engaged in the creation of that content, I think God has a better plan for you. I know that might sound preachy and not what you want to hear, but maybe you'll have an encounter with God, and Jesus loves all of you, and He can transform your life. He transformed my life, and every day is a new day, and it's a hopeful, beautiful life ahead of you. And God loves every single one of us. We're all sinners, and Jesus died.
You've definitely been the most respectful one that I've seen.
Well, thank you. That's very kind, and I can tell you it's not me. If it was me, I'd be yelling and screaming. It's the Holy Spirit. It really is. I know it might sound silly, it might sound cliche, but Jesus has gone to work on my life. And so, God bless you guys. Thank you for a great discussion.
Charlie, thank you for coming.
I was just about to record my show for tonight when I looked through the glass of my studio. My wife was standing there, and her face spoke volumes to me, and I said, "Stop, let's wait. I need to talk to my wife." My wife was on her phone with my daughter and my son, who were at a Charlie Kirk event today. And I have just received news that I'm not even going to repeat because I don't have it. Confirmed.
Charlie Kirk got shot and he's dead. Finally, somebody with a gun, which is almost everybody in the fucking States, grew a pair and fucking went and shot somebody on the right side. Thank you. Can we keep this up?
Please pray for my dear friend, Charlie, and his family, and our republic. Lord, we have been so arrogant as a people.
It's really funny because given how homophobic Charlie Kirk was and how, reprehensibly anti-queer community MAGA is, his most ferocious male fans are so fucking gay for him. They're all crying out of their penises in my messages. Charlie's dead! Off losers. I get it. It's very sad that you now all have to think for yourselves a little bit more because you don't have a creepy fucking racist lunatic spouting his fucking moronic opinions into your ear and telling you what to think. That must be very hard for you. But just remember, he died doing what he loved, defending guns.
We have been so distracted, but we would ask, Lord, that you would watch over Charlie and all those involved. That you would soften our hearts, that we might find forgiveness, strength, and courage.
I don't care that he was a person. He wasn't to me. He was not to me. And if that doesn't make me a leftist because I think he's better off gone, so fucking be it. So fucking be it. Because a lot of y'all like to talk a big talk, but then when someone finally walks the walk, y'all are like, this is so bad. This is so bad. Shut the fuck up. Take your fake ass moral views and get the fuck out of it.
God, only you can save our republic. In the name of Jesus, we pray.
And another thing about Charlie Kirk getting murked, I don't care who you are or what your opinion is. That clean-ass shot, one round, from over 200 yards is nasty. Oh shit, I got kimchi on my chin. Nasty. That's some skills. Like whoever did that. Oh yeah. It makes me think of Luigi. When you watch that video up close in slow-mo and you see the hand motions.
There are news outlets reporting the worst right now, Glenn. I don't know what I'm waiting for before I report it. You know, I trust Just the News. I trust Deseret. What are we waiting for, like, the AP to say it? We don't trust them more than we trust these. They're reporting that Charlie has died. That he's dead. At the age of 31. Which he would have to be if that video was real.
There's no way he survived that. The only good thing is, it had to have happened quickly.
Right. If you see the video, you do not see any suffering.
No.
He appears to have been spared the horrific moments after that the girl on the Charlotte train wasn't, when she knew she was dying or she knew something terrible had happened.
I don't think
In the
Charlie
videos,
did.
it's clear Charlie went down. He went down quickly.
Speaking about controversial things, issues of religion, making a connection between being transgender and gun violence when the shot rang out.
Charlie Kirk is a divisive figure, polarizing, lightning rod, whatever term you want to use. Why?
Well, he's one of MAGA's most prominent voices online. He hosts a near daily podcast. He opines on almost everything. He's been very closely aligned with the president since his initial run for office in 2015, 2016. And his ties to Trump really elevated his own brand. He was really quite young as an activist when the president launched his initial campaign. And he has kind of ridden along with MAGA since 2016 and built up a massive, massive brand of his own. His group has brought in tons and tons of money.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. He fought for liberty, democracy, justice, and the American people. He's a martyr for truth and freedom, and there's never been anyone who was so respected by youth. Charlie was also a man of deep, deep faith, and we take comfort in the knowledge that he is now at peace with God in heaven.
The best part of this whole goddamn thing is that he is not martyr material, so his death will mean nothing. It will activate no one. It will impact few. It's just great.
To me, it kind of feels like, and I said this to Theo too, it's like somebody put the Constitution up on a wall and shot the First Amendment. You know, I mean, people who marry my partner, she's very she's never met him.
Yeah.
You know, and I think maybe something extraordinary is going to happen in the days and weeks ahead. I don't know what it is, but it feels portentous.
As a nurse, I am disgusted by the amount of healthcare professionals that I see making light of, mocking, and justifying yesterday's tragedy. As a medical professional, I treat everyone, every life, with the most respect, regardless of your beliefs, regardless of your background. You are a human life first. And that is how I treat all of my patients, and that is how we should treat everyone. So the fact that medical professionals that are making medical decisions for people are mocking and making fun of the death of an innocent man, a father, a husband, just because you don't agree with their political beliefs is appalling. It is an outrage. I am disgusted, and I just cannot believe that we are here now in this state, in this country, that we are justifying hate crimes on people because of their beliefs. Now, every tragedy that's happened this week, that's happened recently, that's happened anytime is obviously horrendous. But the fact that I see medical professionals making fun of and justifying an innocent man being taken out in front of thousands of people watching live stream of the event in front of his children and his wife is unforgivable and disgusting.
I'm a black man born in America. I know what problems that exist in this country. But I also know there's far more good people than there are bad people in this country, regardless of who you are, what your ethnic background is. White, black, Hispanic, and beyond. I'm in a studio here in Las Vegas, and I'm looking outside, and I see people looking at me and smiling and saying, "What's up, Stephen?" They don't look anything like me. And I don't care, because they're showing me love, and I'm showing love right back to them. At some point in time, we got to recognize, can't just speak about it. Can't just give lip service to when such a vile act takes place. And we're going to give lip service to the tragedy of the moment. And then within 24 hours, we move on with our lives like nothing happened. Something did happen. Don't care what his political beliefs were. I don't care what he felt. I care about the fact that a man was gunned down in front of two of his children who are 5 years of age or less. That he's dead at the age of 31. That his wife is a widow. That his children are fatherless. Because his ideas and his beliefs differed from somebody else, apparently. And then I'm going online and I'm seeing people celebrating it. Shame. Shame on you.
As a registered Democrat, all I have to say is the Charlie Kirk shooting just proves that we are the worst, man. My party is the fucking worst. I got people celebrating, hoping that he dies. Are we fucking for real right now? Where's the empathy? Where's the respect, man? It's disgusting. It's disgusting, truly. And the fact of the matter is this: he was a father, and whether or not I agree with his political opinions, all he truly wanted to do at the core was see this country be the best. And I can fucking respect that. And to see people just be blatantly disgusting. Man, we're the worst, man. We're horrible.
As someone who quite literally had Charlie Kirk blocked on all social platforms because I simply couldn't tolerate hearing another word out of his mouth through my phone, I'm sick over some of the videos that I am seeing of people celebrating this man's assassination. And let me be clear, if you're in the comments trying to argue with me about why people should be celebrating this man's death, you're fighting with air, again. We voted for the same person. Like if you're trying to argue that people should be celebrating this man's death, I know that we went to the voting booth and we voted for the same person. Okay? So you're fighting with fucking air. We cannot be a party that advocates for gun control and gun reform and then be on the internet celebrating when someone that we don't agree with politically is shot and killed in broad daylight. No, this is not grounds to be making jokes. I just saw a woman with like 600,000 followers who's also a mom sitting and being like, thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk. Like, sorry, what?
So I'm very aware that when you look at me, you see the hair and the nose ring, you probably think I'm a huge liberal. I love living in America. I love this country. I am a die-hard centrist. I have a lot of liberal views and I have a lot of conservative views, but most of the time I'm able to see the gray in areas and come to a critically thought out conclusion about the right and wrong. The amount of people I've had to unfriend or unfollow because they're cheering and happy about what happened today is very disheartening. And if you're following me on here and you're upset that I'm not cheering and woohoo, please unfollow me. I'm sorry if you followed me because of the way I looked. We live in a country where I can look the way I want to look and I can have the opinions I want to have and say the things I want to have because of where we live. And this is an attack on freedom of speech, no matter how you look at it, whether you like Charlie, you didn't like Charlie. I only believe in the death penalty for murderers and child abusers, not somebody who's debating people and giving people different opinions platform, whether he agrees with them or disagrees. He's giving everybody chances to talk.
My original video about this got taken down, so I'm just going to reiterate it. You're a fake leftist. If you get on this app with your millions of followers and get upset that other people are celebrating the death of a vile, evil man, you getting on your platform of millions of followers and pointing the finger at those people and being like, you're vile, you're evil, you're bad. When again, those are survivors of that man's abuse. People who have literally had laws passed about them because of the things that man has said. I'm not sorry. I'm allowed to be excited that he's gone. I'm allowed to celebrate that. You are a fake leftist if you are shaming people who are happy. Okay? Okay.
I told myself that I was going to wait to address it thoroughly until I was more clear-minded, until I wasn't as emotionally driven. But quite honestly, I don't think that'll ever be the case. Ever since that day, I feel different. And you can say that's selfish, you can say that's inconsistent, so be it. It's the way I feel. But the way I feel isn't really what matters. What really matters is the truth. And the truth is that these people are evil. You can have your conspiracies about what actually transpired. You can have your think pieces about who exactly did it, who they did it with, who they did it for. But all I needed to see were the reactions. All I needed to see were the celebrations. The out of context quotes to fuel justification. The celebrations of a wife, a daughter, and a son having to see that. The reactions to a man who, whether it made him look good or it made him look bad, still promoted open and honest dialogue either way. That was all I needed to know, that if they had the chance, no matter what the actual motive was, they would have used their reasons to do the exact same thing. I said it before when it seemed like I was in the minority. I said it again, and I'll say it another. These people have set a precedent that states, even if you aren't directly hurting anyone, if you have an opinion or benefit in any way that they believe is detrimental to their in-group's health or life, then you deserve to have yours taken. The bank that denies your loan, the doctor that refuses to do an abortion, the woman that refuses to bake a cake, the random 25-year-old with the wrong opinion about some forever war across the world, the college kid that decided it just wasn't worth the effort to actually boycott Starbucks. Where does it end? It doesn't end until the echo chamber is the only chamber. And whoever's in their way is simply the price they'll pay. That includes me, and that includes...
If you are somebody who has been celebrating Charlie Kirk's death, or even just going as far as to justify it in your own head by calling him a racist or a misogynist or any of these terms, which, by the way, you've overplayed your hand on that front. These words officially mean nothing, so congratulations there. I never want to hear you use the term existential threat to democracy ever again, because I think we can all recognize that the type of person who is justifying Charlie Kirk's death and the type of person who calls everything a threat to democracy, there's quite a bit of overlap here. But I, for one, cannot think of a greater threat to our democracy than murdering the guy who says, come debate me, come talk to me about it, let's have a conversation, in cold blood. Because if we can't debate policy, if we can't debate idea, if we can't have conversations about these things that are going on in our society, we do not have a democracy. So
I wanted to come on here and talk about the death of someone I looked up to, Charlie Kirk. And I wanted to say that it is disrespectful how people are making Fortnite memes and talking bad about him like he was a horrible person. All he did was have boldness in his faith with Jesus Christ.
Bro, after hearing about the Charlie Kirk situation, bro, it's honestly like mad sad, bro. Like, imagine just spreading your point of view and, you know, you having opinions and getting literally murdered for it. We are living in very evil times where even having your own opinion and your own view would literally get you killed. And it's, you know, bro, like literally a child lost its father, a wife lost her husband, like, and you have people laughing about this thinking this is funny, bro. This is not funny. Like, imagine if it was your family. Imagine if it was your mom, your sister, your brother. You wouldn't be laughing. So why are we playing with someone else's death, acting like it's funny? There's nothing funny here. I don't care what someone's opinion is. I don't agree with everyone, but the last thing I would want for them to do is be killed. Like, that's mad weird.
Telling black people you don't need government assistance because you can be somebody is not racist. Telling us that government assistance has hindered us because before we were on government assistance, we were a more successful people is not racist by reading and understanding the facts.
I am heartbroken, I am devastated, and I am livid. What they want is for us to have fear and to go hide because of things like this. And maybe in some ways, I don't know, maybe we should. We have to do things differently, certainly. But Charlie knew the risk. Every day, he had security detail with him. And sometimes nothing can protect us from evil. I know this too, though. Charlie would not want us to go hide and to be quiet.
Hello, Virginia. This is a very raw video. Charlie Kirk has died. I don't know what to say. I can't believe that this is how we treat our political opponents. He's got 3 young children. This is not how it's supposed to be.
I've said it once and I will say it again. TikTok clip culture is ruining people's brains. You all are not as smart as you think you are. Just because you see 7 seconds of a clip out of context where something seems like something is racist or it seems like something is misogynistic, maybe you should watch more than 7 seconds. Maybe. But because your attention span is gone, you're freaking Dory, you think, oh yeah, 7 seconds, he's a fascist. Where did your critical thinking go? Where is it? Where is it? And it's not just the attention span clip culture that's the issue. It's the fact that we're throwing around words as if they mean nothing. Charlie Kirk says, oh, if I see a black pilot, I might wonder if they're DEI. How is that inherently racist? DEI is a thing, is it not? Is it racist to wonder? I wonder if that black pilot is DEI hired. If you said that to your ancestor that got beat, lynched, and you said, this is racism, they'd call you retarded. They'd call you retarded. Yes, I said that word. They call you retarded. So what are we doing here? What do words mean anymore? What is going on? Where is your critical thinking? Where is it? I can't find it. I can't.
Speaking for myself, I was never really enamored by Charlie Kirk. I often didn't like some of his conclusions or some of his reasoning. But that is utterly irrelevant. He was simply a charismatic, good-hearted man who was enthusiastic about traveling around the country, going to college campuses, and introducing younger generations to the idea that they can and should discuss and debate their ideas with each other in order to reach better understanding or at least have some respect for each other. My feelings are best reflected in a reply comment I saw on Twitter. The post said, "You can't just kill the non-threatening dork of the group without making everyone deeply and unequivocally upset." That got the reply, "He was our dork." Someone asked me in 2020 why more people can't see the rot that has been festering in the culture. I said, most people won't see it until the day they have the strongest feeling of their life that they are surrounded by sociopaths. Maybe that day came when the left decided that the appropriate response to the guy who was most famous for talking about ideas was shooting him in the throat.
This is the first time he was ever on TV, and it was right here on Fox and Friends, May 21st, 2012.
When we graduate from high school this coming June, we're handed a diploma. That's also an invoice for hundreds of thousands of dollars that my generation is going to have to pay off through interest, high taxes, and a stagnant economy. We here at SOS Liberty believe that if we do not change the conversation back to us, the kids that are going to have to inherit this debt, that our economy will be stagnant for years to come. And our website, we have really interesting things. We have videos, pictures trying to inspire the youth, sosliberty.com, that has a wide variety of youth from all across the country jumping onto our cause. I'm having trouble finding a summer job, as is Mike, in a lot of different regards. A lot of kids are feeling the effects of what we like to call, with the Washington economy, with a lot of debt, plummeting small business, with higher regulation and high taxes. We're just trying to reinstitute the founding principles, free market, fiscal responsibility. SOS Liberty is a nonpartisan. We don't consider this a Republican versus Democrat issue, but rather a generational one.
Well, Alex, that is the end of the scheduled programming. That took a lot out of me to compile. A lot of that history was just floating around in my head, needing to spill out. And the end compilation was decently heavy emotionally. So, Alex, if you have anything you care to share, thoughts on the piece or the scene in general, I'd like to hear what you have. And if Alex is missing or cannot find his...
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. I don't know how to follow that up. I'm not sure what the what the structure demands next from here.
Yeah, well, I mean,
I have thoughts, but I don't want to just pile on, criticism or whatever. I don't really want to be negative. I appreciate the content really and the intent, but so I don't know where to go.
Well, no, go ahead. I'm not going to I'm not going to beat you up.
No, I know. I just don't. I guess I would like to hear you sum up what you thought the message was, I guess, in compilation, because it was a bit kind of cold open, so I don't really, maybe I don't fully understand what your what the intended sort of point you were trying to drive home was.
Well, if the overall sort of point that I would hope people took away by, even if it was just osmosis, not following thread lines or anything like that, is that for the better part of nearly a decade now, there has been a concerted sort of ritualized practice by certain people in their communities to continuously the term you frequently use is called thought terminating cliches. Introduce thought terminating cliches among people in their communities to sort of try to stamp down the ability for others to start to contemplate certain ideas that fall out of the orthodoxy, and that includes turning people in the out group, once they are outside of that realm, into basically expendable non-human players in this game of life that we have. And that there is an unfortunately large saturation of people who have participated in that game for long enough that many people who have been friends with such characters for a very long time are suddenly feeling themselves extremely alienated and alarmed, let's say, about what the meaning of their reaction to this event is.
Are you saying that the tendency to turn, people or groups of people into, non-morally relevant actors or whatever, non-worthy lives or whatever is sort of concentrated on one side of the spectrum.
It's not concentrated necessarily on one side. In the middle ground of the political game, I do believe that there is an extreme lopsided behavior, both from the ability for the average player in the game to express a lack of empathy or sympathy for the opposing party's grievances, and the degree to which the mainstream media plays a part in encouraging those things. So one of the through lines throughout the piece would be the way that the effects of Antifa were sort of downplayed and enabled by excusing their behavior left and right and making sure to amplify the severity and the threat of the people who were speaking and not causing violence or damage. So that was one of the through lines. The other through line would be for the media to characterize the people who were speaking in a sort of adversarial fashion consistently, including the Andy No piece, where Andy No is a single human being, and the question in the piece became whether or not he was the one antagonizing and against an entire group of people. Right? That he was somehow responsible for his own attack. So the through line through all that is not necessarily that there is a complete lopsidedness in violence specifically, because there have been attacks on Democrats by Republicans or conservatives or extremist elements that might be on the right-hand side, but that the acceptance of those attacks is lopsided in that you do not see a large group of people being able to applaud those attacks. Now, of course, if we expand the scenario to world affairs, that dynamic changes, and then the things that we see that I might be criticizing in the piece do find their way to manifest. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's where my I have trouble sort of subscribing to the narrative, because I've been, it's been like, I don't know, 2 years now, where I've been seeing people, quote unquote, on the right, make very clear to me that, certain people are not people. And, there are no innocents in Gaza. And, well, at least when the Palestinians die, they don't leave their children behind. They also die. So I guess that's better. I don't know. I don't understand. Like, we're having a conversation here about human universals, right? This is not a the argument that we should all sort of cherish life until the border. But then if like a boat with 11 people on it gets evaporated a little bit further out, then they had it coming, right? I can't work with that. That's not an interesting philosophical distinction. So I don't know. I've seen shameful, despicable, I don't know, unacceptable disregard for human life on this platform, and I hate to be both sides here. So I'll just say I don't see the distinction in the tendency to dehumanize, other than the targets, of course. But the characteristic is right there on every group, and there's probably more than two. Actually, we can probably make, at least we can get out of the both sidesing by saying they're not just two sides. But I see, I fucking hate it, but I see it. I mean, just to give you another example, like do you know Eric Raymond, ESR, in tech circles?
I do not believe I do.
Okay, he wrote the fairly famous sort of essay, the Cathedral and the Bazaar, way back when, and talking about open source. He's actually the person who formalize the definition of open source, just to give you a sense of like how legendary this guy is.
Okay.
And he replied to me on X and said, there are no innocents in Gaza. Nobody. Right? Like, okay,
Mhm.
all right. Fair enough. So, like, I mean, consider what that thought means, right? It means that there is nothing you could possibly do. If you happen to be present in a particular piece of land, there is nothing you could do to prove your innocence or to get out of whatever the problem is, whatever you're being accused of. Right? So therefore, how could you possibly be guilty? If you had no choice, like, we're talking about fucking absurd things.
Now, since we do this show together, I'm going to assume that you don't believe that that's how I feel.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. No, we would not be.
That's what I'm saying. Since you still do the show, I'm assuming you don't believe that that's my.
I'm just I guess I'm really concerned. Elon Musk, right? Somebody I really like. You probably less than me. He tweets out, "The left is the party of murder." Okay, that's the tweet. Tweet. He did not consider adding additional context. The funder of the so-called centrist America Party, for a time. I think that plan's off the table, but whatevs. I don't know where this goes. I don't know, this lens of, it's the left versus the right, and the right is orderly and the left is chaotic, and they're bad people and we're the good people, and we are for free speech. Well, for most people, and yes, we did just submit a bill to revoke the citizenships of people that have bad opinions, but other than that, we're the free speech people. And therefore we're good, and we should kill those guys or something. Like I don't know.
In that particular line, who was the those guys and who was the we?
Well, I don't know. I heard the expression "we are at war" more times than I care to count, and people were not defining who's the we and who's the war with. You can fill in those gaps, I suppose. But I don't feel like I have to define it because they're not defining it. It's just a general feeling of war, right? Daryl Cooper, somebody else I really like, tweeted out that we might just have to give Donald Trump a blank check and like look away for a while, and what happens. Okay, all right, yeah.
Now, I would say that sounds fucking retarded.
It does sound fucking retarded.
Okay,
and he is not a retarded man. So what the fuck is going on?
Well, I don't know, because I don't follow him, and you follow him more closely than I do. But this is a scenario.
He had a very good episode on his podcast called Provoked with Scott. Oh my God, Scott Horton. Where Scott basically, I think, talked him down very effectively. It was quite something to watch. So I think that was his id speaking. And in that sense, I think a lot of people's ids are firing up right now. And I guess I don't, even if I subscribe to everything that point of view implies. Okay, let me just subscribe. Like I subscribe 100%. Right. What's the plan? What is it? Everybody
within the context of my piece, do you feel that
men on the right get guns, and
do you feel my piece is? Do you feel the piece that I constructed? Do you feel its point was communicating that one side is better than the other?
I think that could be taken away. Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel that it was rabble rousing or trying to encourage people to? Okay.
No, not rabble rousing.
Okay.
I that's why I'm saying, like, I was kind of like stuck as to how to respond, because you put together something real, right? You put together something that clearly was not a production or an act of manipulation. I guess I've developed a trigger. I get triggered recently by acts of I see these posts that put together, like dozens of, blue sky tweets, let's say, that are celebrating his murder or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I have no way of knowing if that is representative. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But this is the vibe that's being pushed, that is representative.
So the thing that I'm going for in that moment is not to catalog, or what they call, nut picking, which is where you find, the craziest people online. The thing that I'm actually using are the people on their own platforms who are responding. And in my actual personal life, I am looking at Facebook and watching people who are in comments with their own assigned Facebook friends saying, being a lone voice in the comments going, what is wrong with you people? Why are you celebrating this? So there is one thing that I am using to remove myself from the oversampling of nut jobs that might have access to the internet and are able to post content. That's why I ended the piece with people responding to their own followers or talking about people that they know personally who are reacting this way, or at least I tried to. One of my examples in my feed is that a recent person who just does movie reviews went on to do a live show on YouTube pretty much at the moment that the event was coming down, and he took a moment to just say that violence is wrong. And he then had to follow up with a post on his own thing saying, I can't believe I have to say this. Guys, I don't care how bad of a person he was. He didn't deserve to die. So those are the types of things that I'm going based off of. It is not necessarily that there's a quantification of the specific accounting of who has more people who may have disdainful views at any given point in time. It is the simple fact that there is something that people had a belief they had common knowledge about, a common assumption that everyone was in agreement. Like when it came to the assassination of Donald Trump, I think a lot of people who are not reacting the same way right now with Charlie Kirk could find themselves saying, well, he was running for president, and that means that he would be the most powerful human in the world, and be able to do an extensive amount of damage. I don't condone his the attempt on his life, but I can kind of understand why some people might be exuberant. Okay, there is an escape hatch there that allows people to understand something like that, and certain acts of violence like the attack of Andy Ngo, where they beat him and they hit him with a milkshake. Well, he's still alive. Right? And you see the photo of a milkshake and it's like, they just threw a milkshake at him. He'll be okay. The original start of the piece with the punch of Richard Spencer, well, it's just a punch to the face. It's fine. No big deal. And we're not even talking about a slippery slope fallacy. We're talking about the point that when the water is actually starting to boil and the frog realizes that his surroundings, that many people right now are seeing that they have been associating regularly with people where they might have actually had some warning signs that these people felt this way or had the potential to feel this way, but they were operating under the assumption, this common knowledge assumption that everyone agreed sort of that someone should not be murdered for their opinions. And I think people are finding that they are associating or in groups largely where that is not the case, and that is a horrifying sort of thought. Particularly if you have opinions that you think might be dangerous in those groups. Yeah. So that's one of the points that I made at the end there. That was my first. That was at the beginning of the piece. I talked about the feeling that you're surrounded by sociopaths. I'm not diagnosing them as sociopaths medically. It's a sensation, and it's because I'm part of the out group intellectually. But that's at a very alarming moment, that sensation when you feel that you're surrounded by sociopaths. And the end of the piece, I'm saying that there's a lot of people right now who are getting that same feeling.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Yeah, I would like you to. I don't know if I'm arguing a position that does not need to be argued, but I want you to. I've shared a post of mine to the space, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Where I said
Yeah.
getting people worked up right now is an incredibly bad idea. No good can come of this, okay? That
I
is
agree.
my position.
I agree.
I want you to look at the comments of my followers. These are followers I haven't blocked,
Mhm.
right? These are people that have survived the infinite culling. It's my reaction to my responders. Just give it a look. Give it a scan.
Yep. Yep.
I don't
Yep.
know what that is. I don't know what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm. So
Maybe that's what you mean by being surrounded by sociopaths, but like
no. People
not
who
imagining
want. I am a 100%, 1000%, and just to abuse math, 1,000,000% against the idea that Donald Trump or anyone in the conservative, space should be given more governmental power in order to do anything about this situation than they don't already have, and probably majority of the things that they have the ability to do, I'm still already against. So whatever sort of things that they would take from the Patriot Act, borrow from the Patriot Act, do all this stuff, I am probably against them doing all of that. I would have to know what the law specifically was, and I would probably be against it. That's just the default assumption there. But the giving them any more is absolutely a non-starter for me.
Here's something they could do that would be a big change. End the student loan program. Just saying. Anyway.
And I have not screamed against the win because I know that at the moment that would be a futile sort of endeavor, and I have had sort of my own focuses, but I have indicated on my timeline that I feel there are legitimate exercisings of these firings and illegitimate ones, and I have not supported or re-upped any of the activity of hunting people and hunting their comments on Facebook to get them fired. And I don't
I'm completely
support
in favor of that. That's something I'm completely in favor of.
Okay, I don't particularly
Because, I feel
support
like
the idea.
If we normalize cancel culture, and everybody in a government position is liable for something, this is how we get to nobody being employed in government.
Okay, well, let's okay. So let's say there are people that you feel are legitimate targets. I generally,
no, I do not.
Okay.
I
I generally do not feel specifically that we should be trolling the internet to see people's Facebook comments to be getting them fired. I am not sympathetic.
There's something icky
but
about
if,
that. There's something. Look, I have I feel like cancel culture needs to be reanalyzed and re-understood, because there is a problem here, right? Like I've lived it as an employer. I've lived it as people like coming after me. I've had people come after my friends. I've seen my enemies get canceled from time to time. I've seen like a lot of different aspects of it. And on the one side, let's say somebody in my company just goes out and says something insane, right? Like just something completely vile. Like, I'd take every Republican and line them up against the wall if I could, right? Okay, well, that's just speech, right? It doesn't hit the limit of, imminent, the lawless action. So theoretically, right, it's legal speech. Okay. But people at my company are my team, and I don't want my team to have to show up to work with somebody who not only believes this, but it feels comfortable saying it.
So it's perfectly reasonable for people. So this is the there's the game theoretic problem that we all have to acknowledge exists, and then the game theoretic reality sort of becomes a moral justification or a moral allowance to enact in the move, in able to make the play using the game theoretic weakness that exists. And that is that absolutely, if I have a team where I want to make sure that everyone is, kind and accepting to each other and helping each other, because that fosters a good, good structure to have a team, and I find out that one of my team members actually hates every single other one of my team members, to their core as a human being, that is something where I would want to address it and possibly terminate that person unless they were able to find a way to
their employment, you mean, or
yes, their employment. Thank you. The colloquial speech that I was using could be taken out of context. Terminate their employment. And that affords people a sort of opportunistic weapon to find that person's set of opinions that might cross my eyes, that make me wonder whether or not that person's a good fit for my team. There is the additional pressure of doing business, which means that I have to have a reputation affording me the ability to do business, which then creates the problem where if my reputation is now ruined because of the bad publicity, now all of the Google search is turning up this negative publicity from a news article that talks about the event of someone that I've hired and ties them to me, then out of sort of a sense of obligation to the business's own survival, I sever ties with the individual, right? That affords people a power just due to the circumstances of the structure in general and the incentives that I have as a business owner. Now, I don't condone it and I don't support it, but there is a specific structural argument that does have a distinction when it comes to people who are in important positions of a public nature being funded by the public. Since I am generally your friendly neighborhood anarcho-capitalist, I'm not really keen on having a whole bunch of these publicly funded structures to begin with, but that creates another sort of situation where if you have a teacher of school children who is now applauding the murder of someone for their political views, that creates a consideration for the community. And if the Globe winds up pointing aim at someone in the community and that community decides that, hey, this is not something we want to have in our publicly funded school system, I don't participate. I don't enjoy it. But if there is a distinction there, that has some sort of distinction. It's not something I support or believe in, but it has a distinction. One of the things that I said was actually a valid firing was a situation at Office Depot where the employees actually refused service to people who were trying to print out a Charlie Kirk poster. They called the Charlie Kirk poster itself propaganda and refused to service the customers. That's clearly a straight up business violation where the employee's politics is dictating the business's behavior, and that can't stand. So getting them fired and using the power of the internet to make sure that Office Depot sees it, that's have at it. Have at it. But then I specifically did comment that people were trying to get some server at Buffalo Wild Wings fired. And I said, guys, I don't think Buffalo Wild Wings is a sacred institution that we need to cleanse of.
Not yet, but after we're done with
Okay, so in the scheme of things, I am less
with that attitude. It's not going to become one with that attitude.
I am less enraged or upset about the exercising of this cancel culture behavior when it comes to the immediate supporting of political assassinations in people who are in public service to some degree, because I don't agree with public service to begin with, and I don't agree with necessarily hunting and scouring the internet to find these things. But that's sort of the game at the moment, and that's going to happen, and I can't stop it. I wish people wouldn't do it.
In general, I have a hard time sort of look. Let me give you some examples. Okay, I'll give you two, and you'll understand why the sequence I'm giving you is this. I saw Claire Lehman, okay, a person we both respect immensely, and she was complaining about how Quillette had suffered financially, for the brave stances she took during COVID. Okay, and I believe it because I was a subscriber and unsubscribed, so and I'm pretty sure lots of other people did the same. So, and I'm like, okay, you know what? I get that, right? Like, she stood up for what she believed in, which I think is disgusting, but whatever. And she faced financial consequences, right? Like another magazine that didn't have the ability to keep going would have shut down, right? How do I feel about that? Right? Is it that opinions should be subject to the market effectively, right? Like that she should just take a hint and shut up, right? That doesn't feel right. But at the same time, she did vile things. She wrote things that were blatantly false, and she refused to correct them when they were pointed out to her. Like, she she tried to connect me with positions I did not have in public, that positions that would have caused me issues at the time. She did like absolutely horrendous things, right? And at some point you're like, well, people vote with their feet. They don't approve this style of behavior, and they don't have, you're not entitled to being paid to say whatever the fuck comes in your head. So I understand it from that side. And as you know, James Lindsay has, well, I don't know if you know this, but James Lindsay recently said that he lost about 80% of his income because he's sort of, I don't know, his recent holy war against the quote unquote woke right. So, and that's the same thing, right? Is that cancel culture? Should people be obliged to invite James? So
no, I would not categorize those two instances as if I understand particularly the Quillette one. I would not categorize those two as being part of what was classically known as cancel culture. Now, I would like to point out, though, while cancel culture was going on, I also was not saying a whole lot. I don't use the term cancel culture. If you try to, scour my feed for the term cancel culture, I never really mimic the terms, and I never decried it in any lengthy form. I was, of course, against it, and I didn't support it, and I thought the majority of the instances that were ascribed as cancel culture were absolutely, ridiculous and stupid and not good, but in the sense that the only way that you can do anything about it is convince people to not participate. That's sort of a losing battle, right? You can only do that one conversation at a time, sort of, or maybe in the moment when you know people over time, people that trust your sensibilities, trust your sort of moral compass, for you to say at the moment to people you see doing it, saying, hey, I don't think this is probably a good idea. The people I see largely in my feed doing it, I'm not really, personally associated with, to go like, hey, I don't, I don't know what you're doing right now, but I don't think this is good. There are definitely times where I see people who I have associated, over a long time with, do something, and then I'll poke in and I'll question what they're doing, and sometimes they will go, oh, you're right, you know what, I'll that's probably not good, just got ahead of myself, and sometimes they'll just ignore me. It happens, and I continue the association. I don't block as many people. I don't block anyone, but you have a larger audience to deal with than I do. But I don't block people if they disagree with me. I had a couple people commenting recently when I said, I don't think Buffalo Wild Wings is the right target. The sacred institution we need to cleanse of all the rot. Some people commented, the same similar things, and I'm like, this doesn't make any, we can't do this forever, like we're not going to rid every.
Right, that's the consequentialist argument. It's like, you're still going to be sharing a country with these people, right? Like, resolving to go all out and cause a bunch of pain on people who are currently on that side of the.
They're all going to wind up just being unemployed, and then Alex Soros is going to fund them to protest. Great job.
That's right. Or something. There's no what is your long-term plan here? Like, how do you get the country, which presumably you care about, to a better place? With, step one, cancel every person who celebrated Charlie Kirk's death. Step two, question mark.
There is no plan there. There is no plan. It is an extinctional emotional reaction, and it is fun. And people are participating in it, I believe, largely because it is fun. And it seems like now, finally, from their perspective, I would believe, and if someone is, pro this behavior right now and feels that they would like to come up and articulate the specific pro version and the reasoning behind it and what you actually hope to achieve past the question marks that Alex had posted, go ahead and request to speak, and we'll bring you up.
I think Nicholas is raising his hand.
Yeah. As soon as I finish this thought, we can ask Nicholas for his thoughts. Thank you, Nicholas, for being patient. It's fun, and right now, the large amount of national sentiment is on the side of the cancelers who previously had found themselves being canceled for innocuous, random things, possibly being scoured up about their past, not necessarily contemporaneous events. I'm sure there were a lot of things that did happen over time that were cancellations of contemporaneous things, but a lot of things were tweets from the past. The new, one of the examples of the cancel culture.
That is a relevant distinction, by the way, right? Like the thought did cross my mind that you could draw a line between, what you did at 17 should not be grounds for cancellation, but what you did 17 hours ago there is a difference.
One of the examples in the piece that I had was CNN threatening to dox someone who made a meme.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Of WWF with the CNN logo as the head. Okay. So if we talk about sort of the spectrum of plausibly, just cancellation programs, I think a news organization with millions of dollars worth of attorneys on staff doxing and threatening to dox someone who made a meme that they didn't like is a worse offense. I think
it should be taken down for extortion. I think that was an extortion message.
Yeah, I could agree. I don't know if legally that counts, but sentiments I agree with. Nicholas, thank you for your patience. Go ahead and.
You're most welcome. First of all, Gator, I understand you're not alone in a lot of the sentiments that underpins that piece, and I appreciate the effort you put into it. I think that the main thing that I don't want to get derailed upon is, we have a particular issue that just occurred that's fresh in our minds, and I live in Seattle. I have friends here, and you start to get these random comments like, how could you feel bad about that? Because there was a school shooting or whatever, and you start to set criteria and bars and things for you to pass. But I think there's a number of layers to it. You have the sort of, and I think for me in particular, I am the kind of person that enjoys debate, has nuanced opinions, and doesn't always agree with everyone. And I also understand that I refrain a bit from saying a lot of things that I might want to. But, sometimes I play devil's advocate. If people were to trawl up the archives here, they could find them. And those things could be taken out of context, and quoted. And I think that it's important to be able to have the conversation about what occurred here in the context of the fact that this was a person attempting to facilitate civil discourse who was assassinated in the midst of a conversation with a math PhD arguing the regression of, how appropriate it was to label trans as a risk factor or associated variable for violent shootings. And that I think that hit a lot of people particularly hard. And it is, the discussion upon it does not preclude the condemnation of other orthogonal things that are equally as mortifying. It is simply, I think, a point at which a lot of people have understood how bad things have gotten. And being in Seattle and sort of watching what my friends post, it begs this question of, would this person I thought was a friend cheer on my own death if they understood some of my opinions? And that, I think, has been hard.
That's the surrounded by sociopath sentiment I was trying to communicate in the piece.
And it's really hard. I think the other thing, just to bring it back to the beginning, is every time people bring up the Nazi stuff, what I have realized is that people don't actually understand what it was that was occurring at that time. And there's a fantastic documentary done by Thames in 1972, I think, called World at War. And they interviewed Hitler's limousine driver and people that were there. And one of the comments that I remember is this woman who just finally lost it and with a bunch of friends and said, "Don't you know what they're doing? They're taking the Nazis away, or they're taking the Jews away and turning them into glue." And her husband said, "Don't you dare do that ever again. A dictatorship is like a snake. If you step on its tail, it will bite you. You can only go for the head." And I think people really do not understand the forces that were at play at that time. And as such, they don't understand when they themselves are falling into the same patterns that enabled that. The trait of taking your political dissidents to concentration camps or killing them was a canonically Nazi thing. And it's definitely been difficult. I have many thoughts, and it's been difficult to reconcile with what it means to have people that, I was there providing emotional support for them a week and a half ago, and to suddenly have that question of like, well, would they cheer on my own death? But it's difficult, I think, for a lot of people. But anyways, I appreciate the talk and the piece, but that's what I got.
Well, thank you, Nicholas. We'll try to get back to you for more. I want to respond to a couple things you said, but we do have actually some other speakers here, so I want to get them. Please go in the order that I call. L. Ron Hoover, go ahead and voice your thoughts right now.
Hi, guys. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate the show. I was just thinking about, in terms of articulating the argument in favor of quote unquote cancel culture in this circumstance, in terms of where it's appropriate and you can do that and still be in favor of free speech, which the thought process was this. Speech that encourages violence is not protected under free speech, and celebrating the murder of someone is, to me, implicitly a call to violence. And I said that kind of basic sketch of an argument. I'm just curious what you guys thought about it. Thanks.
Well, I can say that the question of whether a call to violence constitutes a worthy aspect of cancellation will probably wind up having a lot of demand for your own hypocrisy to surprise you. You can think of situations of war, like the situation that Alex was mentioning with Palestine and Gaza. If someone were to articulate that there are no innocent Gazans, and there is a 5-year-old Gazan who is killed with a bomb or something of the like, and that person who expresses that opinion let's assume even for the moment that all they've done is express this opinion that if you were to pull them aside and sit them down and actually show them an image of the boy, they would say, no, that boy didn't deserve it. It's even assuming that, you taking their comment and saying, well, that therefore is an ugly, detestable comment because they are supporting the murder of someone, that then opens them up to a free-for-all for people whose political cause is Palestine, and therefore they can put as much pressure on them they want to silence them to get them fired. I think that I speculate that you might go, hey, that doesn't make any sense. This is a different sort of context than the premise that I said. So then we would have to narrow it down to something along the lines of a concept of illegitimate killings, which, I would certainly classify Charlie Kirk speaking at an event, voicing his opinion, an illegitimate killing. And therefore something where if you're celebrating it, what we would classify as a political killing, that would certainly possibly be, something to consider as a legitimate sort of place where social pressure to inflict a cost onto that person winds up becoming a fair game. But then what about someone who is celebrating, someone who has been accused of a crime, not yet convicted, not even yet put through a trial, and demanding that they deserve the death penalty for the accusation, or someone who is then acquitted and people believe that they were actually guilty, and then still saying that that person deserves to die? That situation, how does that play into it? So I think you would wind up finding that there would be a lot more room for hypocrisy down the line than that simple concept might afford you.
Well, sorry if I may, unfortunately the problem with that argument is that it is pretty much a restatement of it's okay to punch a Nazi, right? Because the whole point of that is, Nazis do awful things, therefore they have lost the right to not, to not be subjected to violence. We don't condone violence, of course. We only condone it to people who have already, put themselves out of the category of peacefully, respectful people or whatever. And it's an endless game of like, well, what do you mean by violence? What do you mean by Nazi? What do you mean by punch? What do you mean by, it becomes silly. But I will say technically, there is a specific definition of what kind of speech is not considered speech, basically. And I think the case is Brandenburg versus Ohio, where that was sort of litigated, and it went up to the Supreme Court, and the standard that was set is imminent incitement to lawless action. So it has to be something like, hey, you crowd of people, go right now, imminent, right? It has to be something of very short term, to that guy's house right there, and lynch him. Like that is,
I guess though, in the context of given that the circumstances afford us the ability to put social pressure on places if we so decide, what might be our position if we were to grant that there are situations that would call for it? I mean, if you have like me, sort of like there's really no reason to be doing this position, which is an extreme position of that kind, where a lot of people I would see, feel would find that there are circumstances. What necessarily in advance those circumstances are, maybe they don't know, but that there could be a justified reason for calling for someone to be fired, even at a place that you're not employed or not even a customer of. But what are the terms that one might consider of legitimacy if you were then to also say, as sort of a gentleman's agreement with your friends, this is the things we find acceptable? What would those be? Not necessarily from a legal standpoint.
Sorry, I don't think I got that.
So if you and I, Alex, have to decide that some of these things we would support and some of them that we wouldn't support, what sort of things would you say would be a early arbiter, and as opposed to a case-by-case whimsical sort of decision that we would make, going, hey, do we support this one, yes or no, as it was happening? Like, what would be
these things as in what
the canceling? The canceling is currently going on. Let's say, using it as a example, saying this is the activity that's currently going on. People are seeing posts by people who are approving of Charlie Kirk's assassination. They're being expressing glee over it or happiness, and their employers are being found through the scouring of online sleuths, and their employers being contacted and pressured to firing them.
My opinion is sort of schizophrenic in this regard, because first of all, I probably would have companies just make up their own, just be able to associate with whoever they want. Just absolute right to say, I can work with you, I can't work with you. Why? I don't like how you smell. Whatever. No reason given. So I fully support that, I think, broadly speaking. At the same time, if I was running a company today, I've thought about what I would do to shield myself against attempts to essentially override the will of the company itself by attempting to lever social pressure on them to do something others want to somebody that is working for that company, and for all I know is a great employee. And I would probably have a blanket policy of never firing anybody because of a social media campaign within the time span that social campaign is ongoing. Just as we have heard you. We are recording the information, and we will take a decision at our own time when we have judged that people are no longer stalking us to figure this out. And the longer you stalk us, the longer we will take. So fuck right off, basically. Just as a blanket rule, regardless of the facts of the case. If the company itself has not noticed that that something has happened, and the only reason they are looking into it is because they've been mobbed on social media, then I think the company should, as a principle, refuse to be blackmailed in this way. And that gives you, by the way, a shield, because you're not protecting anybody in particular. You're protecting your own autonomy. I don't know. I don't know if that helps you.
Well, I think that's a decent idea from the recipient side, but right now place yourself as the actor, someone who believes that there are times where it is a legitimate thing to do to try to get someone fired, in, let's say, in the realm of things that might be classified as a political opinion, of which desiring a political opponent to be murdered, is included in that classification. And that it is a valid thing for you to do, to take someone's expression of that and report it to their employer, demanding that they take action against that person for their untoward views. In that category, is there a way that you think you could identify what the characteristics are that make something a legitimate exercise of that sort of demand?
I mean, I think you had a good example there, right? About people who are practicing their own. They're basically commandeering the resources of their company to push their own agenda, for example.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right, saying like, no, you cannot have this copying machine because I don't like what you're doing. Right, that is, in a very real way, theft. All right, it is refusing to use it the way you are employed to use it, and exercising ownership that you do not have.
Right.
Anyway, but that's an easy one, right? That is a customer complaint. Right? It's not even a whatever. But it gets hairy. It gets really hairy really fast with this stuff, and especially because all sorts of things can be all sorts of things, right? Like, oh man, what did I see? I saw something that was so obviously a nasty thing. Oh yeah, the thing about the future dead cops thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
where it's like, well, we're all gonna die, like, eventually. Like, he didn't actually say anything false or incite anything specifically. It's like the way you understand the problem with what he said is like, why did he say that? Right?
Mhm.
Why that? Of all the things he could say, why pick that sentence? Which is a dodgy way to get there. You see what I mean? Like, this is not a scalable form of analysis. Anyway, it gets hairy. I don't know. I think it has to be down to individual companies to have their own policies and let the survival of the fittest decide what policies work and which don't ultimately. Some things you want to be responsive to your customers, and some things you never want to be responsive to a mob. So, really depends. And sometimes you want to, encourage the public to bring things to your attention, and some things you don't want to be bullied. It just, it's very, very hard to make broad pronouncements. However, check Signal. I've sent you a message. I need to briefly run, but thankfully we have a lot of people here want to talk. So I'm happy if you keep it going, and I'll maybe I'll drop back in a little bit later or not. But this is great. I like the conversational element here. We're getting going.
All right. I'll hopefully talk to you later, Alex.
Yes. Thank you.
We're going to go to ProBucks, then Ellie next. ProBucks, go ahead.
Hey, what's up?
How you doing?
Okay, question. What do you think about the difference between the cancel culture of the people versus the cancel culture of, for lack of better words, the elite cabal? Whereas the society themselves as individuals can decide what they want to cancel or not, kind of how democracy works, or I guess our economy in America, capitalism. But, if you've got institutions, a few rich individuals who don't appreciate someone targeting or exposing them, and then they work together through their influential powers to, ruin somebody or, cancel them, like artificially, is how I would describe it. Is like, how do you find that to be a difference or not? And then I guess the third is like public services, like what Alex said earlier, doing resources that aren't yours, like a printer shop, or even, as I would argue, sometimes teachers in a classroom using their platform as teachers to, push a message that they're not supposed to be pushing, maybe in a classroom. Just like cancel culture from those three perspectives. What do you think on that?
Well, yeah. So maybe you missed part where I did touch on some of that. So if you're talking about, let's call them the rich, just for lack of a better term, who get together and start to blacklist individuals to try to, or people of a certain demographic, whether it be a political demographic or otherwise, and try to blacklist them is through some sort of, a cabal or cartel. That might fall under currently existing sort of dynamics, that legally make it questionable. But morally speaking, of course, I take objection to sort of, that sort of coordinated behavior. Although I might not be in a position necessarily to do anything about it, I still take objection to it. When it comes to the reverse, so the citizenry, as you described it, in engaging in this behavior, well, by and large, there's nothing I can necessarily do except voice my objections and try to convince people that they themselves should not participate in the behavior. But otherwise, I have no power to do anything about it. I find it objectionable because most people are not doing it by a concerted, deliberate reasoning process in which they said, here is the reason that I am doing this. This is the reason that it is just. This is the reason that it needs to be done. I have, for the last 2 years, which someday I hope to talk to, but for right now I can only be a little bit vague about it. But I have been helping a friend of mine. A friend of mine someone came onto his property in 2023 and shot at him. They had a rifle and they shot at him several times as he ran away. And he tried to flag down a car with 2 people in it to ask them to help him leave and get him to safety. and the person who was hunting him took the rifle and shot at the car, and endangering the lives of these other two people as well. And I have talents. I have been able to do a lot of sleuthing about this individual and uncover basically their entire life's history, even though the internet didn't exist to the degree that it did today. I've been able to find out lots of information about this person, their relatives overseas, find out things that they have done, including massive amounts of fraud that they have committed throughout the years. And I have done that and withheld lots of the information strategically for a purpose, because I am trying to help my friend who is still in hiding because his assailant has not yet faced trial. I have withheld that information, and I have strategic reasons for particular bits of information that I have withheld that I would utilize when appropriate, because I have not done anything that has been outside of the bounds of the law in order to help him fight this person who tried to murder him. I have had to do that methodically. When we talk about these cancellation things, these events where all of us are online, we're sort of just celebrating and getting enthusiastic, and we see something that someone said and we go, look, I have an opportunity to participate in this cultural phenomenon that we're all engaged in, where I know that if right now there's a website that people can go to submit a person, and either you might have to submit their employer, I don't know, I didn't look at the website yet, but you find the person and you submit them, and maybe you have to find the employer yourself, or maybe the website is who's accumulating and it's going to do the research for you. But now, just because someone has posted this horribly untoward opinion online, there is now an automatic process that doesn't require anyone to think necessarily about the legitimacy of the individual target. Maybe they're having a horrible day. Maybe Charlie Kirk stole their girlfriend once in life, and they have had a bad bleed of thought and celebrated at a moment of weakness for themselves. We don't know. But now they're on a course to possibly become unemployed or have a mob of people harass them online, which maybe some deserve it, maybe some don't. But there aren't people involved in this process at the moment, engaged in a concerted effort to really properly adjudicate these people. A lot of the people I've seen, I might be sympathetic to say that, yeah, they deserved it given their positions. Like they're a teacher in a public school system. They are in a public university, and they are in a high position with tenure engaged in this behavior. And I could understand that perhaps if the institution itself had terms that they were violating, rules of decorum and rules of behavior for people that they employ, and all that's happening is that the people who are finding these tweets are exploiting that particular thing, I have less concern over it, because the people are bringing something to light that the institution has declared itself is something that they are concerned with. But by and large, the individual actors taking this act are not giving that the same consideration. They are not doing it methodically, and I think anyone who is doing it without thinking is doing something wrong.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's kind of shocking to me how that's taking place. I kind of wouldn't expect it to come from the same people who just a year ago were against this same type of thing happening for people who were like against wearing masks and everything like that for COVID. I know that it's, the free speech pendulum switches between the right and left all the time, but it's just not shocking to me that people are celebrating, I guess, Charlie Kirk's death, not because of who he is, but just because of the culture, the media. It's within the young lingo of smoking on dead homies, or making fun of things that are very vile online, gamer culture. It maybe for like boomers and older people, that's something very shocking to them, but for younger people, this is super duper common. And I think that maybe it's something closer to how it was described earlier, like that frog boiling in water and realizing, oh, like now it's cooked. Well, I think that's kind of what's been happening here. And I don't know. It shouldn't. It's not moral, but I just don't see it surprising.
I don't see it surprising either. This is 8 years of pent up rage and emotion that is expressing itself. I think that everyone who finds themselves exuberant over the moment also needs to ground themselves in remembering that at the moment they actually have all three branches of government, and that there's still, quote, fights to be had, not of a physical nature, but of a political nature, where there are entrenched people inside of the state who, let's say, are counter to the actual instructions of the people who they serve under. They're actually working to thwart the president in his declarations, actively working against him and things like that inside of the government itself. And sure, that's a hindrance. But for the moment, you have all three branches, and you wind up losing opportunity to fight the right fights because you're spending way too much time fighting the wrong ones. Where, as Alex had said earlier, what comes next? Now you have, and I've said it on Twitter as well recently, after all these people become unemployed, then what? And I jokingly said Alex Soros is going to, swoop them all up and pay them to be protesters. Last thing, Probox, then I'm going to switch to Ellie because they've been patient.
Oh, yes. Sorry for taking so much time. The last thing would be more just about the identity of the shooter. I don't know if that was a topic that you guys spoke on earlier because I missed the first 30 minutes of the conversation.
It has not yet been a topic. Not yet been a topic.
Okay. Should I even? Well, okay, then I won't go into the specifics of him since I don't even think we have all the facts on that, but more just on the youth, mental illness in general. There's a lot of nihilistic youths out there, even if they are sexually confused or not. And it's shockingly common. I have talked to like a younger cousin who could give two fucks about America, and it's completely crazy. Like the stuff he would describe to me about if something happened here, how much he would not care. And it's just part of the broken social contract, I think, that we have in America. So whether it has to do with his sexual identity or not, or antifa or not, or if he, was I don't know. It's just like, I think that in general, this is going to be a problem until we try to find out how to fix the social contract and get mental health help in America. And that's all.
All right. Thank you very much. And, if you're still around, we'll do another swing through and get more comments. Ellie, go ahead.
Hello, guys. Thank you to have me on. Greetings from Germany. And I hope that I don't mess it up now.
You're fine.
The question was, thank you very much. The question was asked what the Nazis are aware, and I'm very concerning about Operation Paperclip, for example. I didn't know that a few years ago. When I researched it.
Uh-oh. Ellie, we lost you for a moment. Okay. Ellie, we're gonna go to Donald J. Trump, and hopefully you can come back. And at the moment you come back, Donald, you have the floor until Ellie comes back, because she's waited so very long that we want to make sure that she has opportunity. Okay, so until Ellie comes back, Donald J. Trump, PhD, you have the floor.
Oh, that sounds good. You guys can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay. I just had a quick comment kind of on the left, like what I've seen going with the back and forth with the messaging and like the cancel culture stuff. I was reminded of like Dune, Children of Dune, where he goes like, when I am weak, I ask you for freedom because that is your values. When I am strong, I take away your freedom because those are my values. So I'm wondering how much of the right, because you have the obvious like Libs of TikTok. She's always been in the cancel stuff, kind of been hypocritical that way. But how much of the right is now realizing, and even the founding fathers, if you read the papers, the Federalist Papers, and Anti-Federalist Papers, they kind of assumed that we'd be a country that at the core values would always assume we're all American and we all believe in kind of that freedom concept and natural rights, natural responsibilities, inalienable and alienable rights. Like, what do you do when you have a group like, I mean, even in the Civil War, the South, when they broke off, we disagreed on one core concept, slavery. Big concept, but when they reconstituted the government, they constituted basically an American government in the South. So what do you do when you have a group that doesn't
Wait a
agree
minute.
with...
The message was I was muted by the host.
No, you were not according to me. I didn't do it, I promise. You're not muted again. What's going on? I'm not muting you, I promise.
Looks like she muted herself.
I'm not muting you. I've never muted a single person on this space. Okay, Donald, go ahead until Ellie comes back up, because I'm not muting her for any reason.
Gotcha. Yeah, it looks like she's reconnecting. No, the last part I had on that is like, so I guess the question moving forward is, what do you do when you finally realize, like, and this is on the right too, there's a small but growing movement on the right. What do you do when you have groups that don't actually hold the same basic core principles you do, or the same basic epistemology of the world as you do, and your government does?
Well, it becomes extremely difficult to handle that when the rules of the government afford basically everything to be, quote, democratically chosen. So when you...
I apologize. The message shows up, muted by host. I don't say that you are doing that. I think maybe some bots are doing that.
Gosh, I really wish this problem weren't occurring for her, because I'm not doing anything to spark it. While she attempts to reconnect, the problem comes when everything winds up in government with the idea that it should be democratically chosen. We currently have a situation where, you know, your local government is democratically elected, so to speak. Okay, fine. Everyone votes for that. We have the House of Representatives. I talked about this on a podcast with Benjamin Boyce. So if you want to hear me talk about this at length, go ahead and listen to that. It was a recent election podcast with Benjamin Boyce. And the House of Representatives, we've all gather around and we vote for our representative. And the Senate used to be actually chosen by the state legislatures. So the states would choose the Senate, but they changed that during the progressive era and made it so that now the people, quote unquote, elect the senators. And then the president wasn't always chosen by this vote that we have with the Electoral College. There was actually a process of you choosing the electors in the Electoral College. And they decided to sort of confuse that and then make it sort of a state-by-state choice of how you apportion these people that you call electors based off of a popular vote. And that's a further push by the progressive people to get rid of that, because the Electoral College number system, as it's now played, winds up being, you know, sort of confusing and hard to articulate because it's been modified over time, and they want to push for a national public vote. Now, if you open up the national public vote to all layers of the federal government, and then also have the same people who are doing the same voting push all of their same desires to all three branches, the president winds up being a pseudo legislator. The legislative branches wind up being two branches that have like no real distinction except for the time that they spend in office and things like that. And then you basically eventually, I guess, push for the Supreme Court to be popularly elected and then have term limits. And now every single branch of government's popularly elected, and it's a free-for-all. Then everyone's idea of what politics is winds up changing. And if you're not getting your way, then someone else is taking the rights that you believe that you have away from you, or taking your money and spending it on stuff that you don't believe it's supposed to be spent on. And that creates sort of the nightmare that we have, in my opinion. Ellie, let's go again. and see if we can get you up.
Okay, it seems to work now.
Okay.
I'm. The message came up, muted by the host. Anyways, sorry again. My English is not very fluent, and I hope I don't screw it up. Again, to the Nazi question, I'm concerning with this Operation Paperclip, and I think the United States are hijacked by the offsprings of the Nazis. And I'm concerning as well with the Charlie Kirk assassination, because this case hits the German news like back the time.
Oh no, not again. Oh my gosh. Ellie, if you don't make it back up, I will answer the first part of your statement there. I don't know what's happening. I really wanted to hear the second part because I do want to hear your comments. Donald J. Trump, respond to what I said, and then I will respond to Ellie's new comment there.
No, I 100% agree with you. I'm all for us regressing back to where we were kind of at the start with some kind of restricted voting, maybe not necessarily private property, because entrepreneurial like me would probably just sell people 1,000 square feet of property for, their vote. But there should be some kind of restriction, whether it's like if you're in the federal service or bureaucracy, you lose your vote, or whether it's something like a Heinlein service equals like a vote, something like that. And I also agree the Senate should be devolved back into the states making it. And I think that the House of Representatives, the proportionment should be like backed off to like, say, 100,000 people represented by one representative. Because if you get a big enough House of Representatives, and I think it was Thomas Massey who said this, you really can't bribe 3,000 like House of Reps people. It's really hard to affect a vote with bribery when you have that many reps in the House. And you're getting a lot more localized voting at that point. But as far as the other part, like you said, pure democracy, some of these people want pure democracy, but some of these people, mostly on the left, but in a growing portion on the right, or either want to revert to monarchy, which is divine rule from an outside source, or they're devolving into fascism and communism, which is like either a Gnostic religion where man is God, or a religion like where the state is God. And I don't know how you deal with that on a scale, other than through maybe kind of running these backlash mechanisms that they've been using.
Yeah, the problems go back a long way and would require, obviously hours upon hours of historical review to talk about. But there are several points where it's fairly easy to start to describe, what has occurred over time. And that is that, definitely since the founding of the country, but largely starting in the progressive era in the early 1900s, there was a concerted effort to sort of distort the interpretation and meaning of aspects of the Constitution and try to get as much leverage as you possibly could out of those words in order to enact laws that you wanted. And one of them is called the Commerce Clause, which is, I believe, Article 2, Section 8, if my memory serves me correctly, which is where it's the Congress has the power to legislate and intermediate between things, between items that affect interstate commerce. And that was originally sort of intended, if you look at the debates from the constitutional debates, originally intended to, prevent different states from having tariffs against each other and causing tensions that might want to have states go to war against each other. Because if you remember, we were only a few states at the beginning of the Constitution, and so having the federalist government be sort of the economic arbiter of those types of behaviors was a feature that they wanted to have. But now, if you look throughout the laws of the U.S. government, the Commerce Clause is used as the excuse to make a law about whatever people have decided they want to try to make illegal. So when they want to make something illegal, like let's say, child pornography at the federal level, or certain types of violent crimes. If you recall the Kyle Rittenhouse thing where everyone kept saying he crossed state lines, that was sort of a hint at the fact that in order to often elevate something to be into a federal jurisdiction, you have to, quote, affect interstate commerce in some way. Alcohol prohibition had to become an amendment in the Constitution in order for the federal government to make illegal before they began starting, to really rely on this interstate commerce sort of loophole. There was a Supreme Court case in the 90s, I believe, when Bush was. Sorry, it was 2000s when Bush was president. Sorry, not the 90s, but I believe the case started to be brought in the 90s. But anyway, this case, which is, I believe, Gonzalez v. Reich, was a case that was brought where people were growing marijuana in California on their own land and consuming it. And they came under the Schedule 1 federal marijuana prohibition rules, which, made marijuana illegal. So if you just go back to what I said a few seconds ago, we had a constitutional amendment to make alcohol illegal, but we didn't for marijuana. And why? Where does that come from? Well, it's because these substances are now under this umbrella of interstate commerce. So these people were growing marijuana on their own property in California on their land and consuming it themselves. They weren't engaged in any commerce whatsoever. Yet the majority ruling in the Supreme Court at the time stated that they were, because had they not grown it on their own land and consumed it, they would have had to purchase the marijuana, which presumably could have had interstate commerce involved and affected interstate commerce. It is a very preposterous sort of ruling, and everyone's favorite constitutionalist, Clarence Thomas, actually wrote the dissent in that, and I encourage you to look it up and read it, because he was very cheeky in it and sort of outlines the preposterous nature of sort of that claim. So there's a whole rot that you can look at that started with the progressive era, where sort of all of these loopholes and things came into play, including Woodrow Wilson, who really was the prime mover in expanding the administrative state, as he liked to call it, which just becomes the regulatory agencies, where Congress basically abdicates their responsibility and passes a law that is so wide that says regulators will figure it out. Then the regulators are, becoming the legislatures, because they're actually deciding the rules as they go. They're sort of making it up in real time and modifying them as they go. So, I mean, there's all sorts of problems that cause the system to wind up putting everyone at contention over what's actually going to happen, because the floodgates have been opened to what the federal government even controls, and the way that you exercise that control has, while increasingly become open to popular vote, making everything that you're voting for a personally affecting issue. It's it could take a long time to dissect in full, but there's my answer.
Well, no, it's actually funny. If you read the anti-federalist papers, which you probably have, they basically called most of this. It's actually kind of hilarious when you read it and you go, oh, yeah, they called that. Oh, yeah, they called this. Yep, they called the judiciary being activists. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, there's a lot of rich history in there. Ellie, are you still with us? Are you able to speak?
I'm here.
Okay, I want to answer your first part about Paperclip, and then I would like you to continue your second part. So Operation Paperclip, what Ali had mentioned, was basically a program after World War II where we conscripted a whole bunch of Nazi scientists and engineers and put them into important roles, because the Nazis, prior to us developing the atomic bomb ourselves, were on their way to develop the atomic bomb, and possibly we were concerned that they would beat us to it. They had excellent scientists and engineers in Nazi Germany. Now, it would be an open question the degree to which these scientists were, genuinely Nazis in their belief systems, or if they were going along with it to save their own hides. But we conscripted a whole bunch of them and put them into places inside of our government. So if I have your concern correct, you would be concerned that, that sort of legacy never really left, and Nazi ideology may wind up having permeated our federal government throughout the years and sort of corroded it over time. Is that an accurate representation?
Yes, it is. In my opinion, they infiltrated NASA and the CIA, and together with the Dallas brothers. Of course, there was a cooperation between them, and I can't understand why they did that. And now you have this ideology that we had in Weimar Republic back the time in Germany, in the United States, in my opinion. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, I don't know. But I can see the patterns.
Well, a policy like that would certainly seem concerning to people today if we were to propose it. If we were to, have a mortal enemy go to war, like perhaps if we declare full war with Russia at some point, and after winning the war of Russia, just, stealing a whole bunch of, Russian sympathetics and putting them in our high levels of government or important places in technology and engineering inside of the government with government roles and high level access. I think a lot of people would give pause to that and wonder about their allegiance and sympathies. I think, though, the silver lining or the saving grace, which is not necessarily as rosy, but somewhat rosy, is that the United States was not, free of similar or co-traveling thought processes and ideologies in World War II itself. A lot of the things that the Nazis believed had strong, sympathetic people in our side, where you could say they were co-travelers with the Nazis, and maybe there were dividing lines, paths too far. Maybe they didn't have the same opinions about Jews, or maybe they didn't necessarily have the same desires or concerns or cares about Nazi Germany going and trying to take over other places of Europe and convert them. But the ideological underpinnings were very pervasive. There were a lot of occultist practitioners. There were a lot of people who had the eugenics beliefs, where through eugenics you could build a master race. There were a lot of people like that, and so I don't believe that we imported enough Nazis to pollute what was already polluted in our system. So it's sort of a silver lining that isn't necessarily too pretty, but I don't believe that we went from a pure state to an impure state by, adopting Nazis when we didn't already have enough people who were, co-travelers.
I mean, hello, I'm back.
Hi, Alex.
The Dresden bombing was done with full non-Nazi participation, presumably, right?
Well, that's an individual act, not necessarily an ideology that we would be referring to. What do you mean
an individual act? Like a rogue pilot?
Well, I mean, there is a difference between decisions that have been made throughout time in war that any side might make at any time, and we have a historical instance of it, versus what you might call a methodical thought pattern that is not necessarily as widespread as war, or historical as war.
Yeah, I don't know.
Eugenics and stuff is a very neoteric.
Eugenics was a widespread point of view.
It was a widespread point of view. That's what I know. That's where, I don't know where you came in, but that's what I was explaining.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't there
But I mean, at the same time, the people who were imported by paperclip, it wasn't just to learn what they may have found out at their failed nuclear program. It was a lot of stuff and a lot of skullduggery, and they were also allowed to do Nazi stuff. what they were doing.
Well, no, I did. So you may have came in a little late. I did say that the silver lining is that we didn't go from a pure state to an impure state by importing these people. We went from a whatever degree of impure state we were, which had a lot of co-travelers along those ideological lines. And so we didn't just, wind up polluting ourselves with Nazis. That's the silver lining, is that we already had a lot of that to deal with. So whatever impurities, we just sort of added a few more people.
I mean, you can make an argument that there's a level of operational callousness, let's put it this way, that had been developed that was allowed to seed, organizations like the newly founded CIA, right? And you can sort of tell a story where some practices were imported that wouldn't have been. But you can't really blame, I don't know, some people who were captured in war for doing what they were told. You have to blame the people who told them to do what they did. So not during the German, what they were doing in Germany. That's a different story. I'm saying, if you know who these people are and you bring them in and you tell them to do a bunch of stuff, well, then you can't be like, I could not have known. I thought they would just do science. For example, that some of these people continued and made a virus that they sprayed into the fog in San Francisco just to see how many people would get infected. Just legitimately, they put it into the fog because they understood that they would be kept pretty low by the fog. So, and then a bunch of people kept showing up in hospitals.
I don't know how you do science, Alex, but you have to conduct experiments to test how well fog works to hide the lethal agent.
Right. Randomized controlled trial. We'll pick a random city.
Yeah. So Ellie, you've been so patient. I want to get to your second part because you've had the technical trouble and everything. So if we've addressed your first part, I would like to get to your second part. Oh no, I fear Ellie is having more technical trouble.
No, I'm here.
Okay. If you had a second part to this, you would start talking about the news in Germany as it was affecting you.
Yes, I remember, because the Charlie Kirk thing hit the German news like back the time George Floyd, and I thought, why is that? And I think it's not about this Charlie Kirk guy. I think the media is telling themselves and us as well that I agree with Ian Burlingham, a very good American I'm listening to, that the war is declared on the white man. It's my opinion, and I agree with him.
Well, that might be so, and as a white man, not to dox myself on the internet here, but as a white man, I guess I could be really concerned about that. But fortunately, like the way a zebra's stripes function, there are a whole lot of white people, and I blend into the crowd in that way. So, I don't know necessarily what a war on white people would mean. I know that I hear that term used a lot, and I know that there are a lot of people who have an ideology that says that there is a pattern of behavior or an ideological strain of thought that exists within what they call white culture, which largely winds up at the end of the day being equivalent with capitalism. If you follow all of the items that belong to it, it just winds up being a critique of capitalism.
And it is a bad term, but let's explain it. Because according to Ian Burlingham, an American, you can see it on my Twitter page. The last podcast is about him. And he says the only man who, because this cartel, the international syndicate cartel, the oligarchs, they want to steal the boomers' wealth, according to him. And not only white men, the man, get rid of this term white man, the man who want to fight for his land, they are gone, because we are in Europe flooding with foreigners. In the United States, you are flooding with foreigners, and nothing against them. It is not about racism or something like that. It's about being connected with the land. The Ian Burlingham described them back to Rome as the Praetorian Guard, the military under Julius Caesar. And these people fight for, not for you as the people, they fight for the oligarchs. And the last man who want to fight for the land, they are weakened on purpose. This is what I mean. And according to Ian Burlingham, and listen to him, I think his standpoint is very good.
So sure, there is a way that you can look at that perspective and find it accurate, in the sense that there are a large number of Western governments who are integrated economically, who are often finding themselves with a need or a desire to import often what is a lot of cheap labor from other countries, and sometimes they wind up importing a lot of people from other countries who at some point no longer serve their immediate economic purpose, but the hope may be that the economy will expand and they will have a supply of cheap labor that will allow and afford the economic expansion and allow them to compete on the open marketplace. Because in most Western societies, the stable population that exists, the population that is there and living there, has a lower birth rate than is expansionary. And when you have a declining birth rate, you have a possible what they call inflationary pressure on your wages, which makes your products more expensive and not competitive, your products and services more expensive on a competitive market. So the dynamic and frame that it is oligarchs versus the people, and they are doing these things. Yes, you can view it that way. Those aspects are happening, and perhaps there is a part of the story in a personal way that is attempting to destroy aspects or fabrics of society. But I don't know if that is the best way to view the dynamic at all times. I think that clouds your judgment sometimes from seeing the bigger picture. If you were to go higher in the air and see the ground from the sky, it's not wrong, but I don't know if it's complete.
But I think...
Oh no. She's having technical problems again. I swear I'm not doing anything to mute her or anything.
I didn't mute her either, by the way. I just want to clear my name here.
Okay. All right. Ellie, if you come back, go ahead and chime in. Nicholas, we got to you at the beginning. Have you had any new thoughts you'd like to share as we do a second rotation here?
I mean, I think on the Nazi side, like, there was a whole legitimate chapter of the Nazis that I think there's video or film of it having Nazi rallies in the U.S. back in the 30s. I briefly looked it up on Wikipedia, but I think it was disbanded once war broke out. But yeah, I think the main thing that, in terms of where we go from here, that I've understood is that the conversation has to shift towards good versus evil, and a condemnation of all political violence versus a condemnation of none. And the thing that I've struggled with is the people with whom I've tried to have the conversation. You and I disagree. If you want me to stand up for your rights to have an opinion on the left, then you need to stand up for Charlie as well, because I share opinions with him. And that has been, I think, the most difficult thing for me, is when people do not like the idea that there's just been a few conversations I've had where that has I've been unable to get that point across because there's that poem, first they came for the communists, et cetera, that I don't think people grasp that there can be times when when their mistake is evident only once it is too late. And
right.
That's, I think, what has really bothered me about this is that, we've just had it's the First Amendment that I think is under attack, and it's simply the fact that this occurred, not only of Charlie but also during a time when he was doing his best to foster open academic, honest discussions on difficult topics between people of different perspectives that really made it, I think, a lot harder, because it becomes a lot harder to, especially when people begin justifying it under any justification, because it is antithetical to what we in America ostensibly stand for. And those sorts of comments of, well, he approved of the Second Amendment, therefore he got what was coming to him. I see that over and over and over again, and I'm like, that is dangerous, my friend. But at the same point in time, it's hard for me to convey that danger to people. And I don't know. There's much that can be said, but
it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. I think if there is a good outcome, and I'm not strongly pressing the use of that word. I'm just trying to line up the positive sentiment that might arise from the horrible situation. It is that it seems like if you had to kill someone, you killed the wrong person to get your goal of shutting them up. You shut up that person, but I think a lot of people, just because of the way that he was constantly filming all of his activity, what I see is a lot of people going with the news of his killing and going and watching everything that was recorded and finding out for themselves whether or not he is as he's been portrayed. And so I think that will counteract some of the copy-paste justification of he said this, therefore he had this opinion, therefore that you're finding. And at the moment, I'm seeing a lot of people who are at the moment more inclined to speak their mind, sort of in defiance of what they witnessed this week.
Yeah, I mean, I suspect the same. I think that it's hard for people with a sense of morality to support what has occurred, and I think I suspect it may be a bit of a turning point.
That has been used constantly, and I don't think everyone. I don't know if everyone has noticed that they were using the same name. It's fairly apt and poetic in some way. Probucks, coming back to you.
Yes.
Any additional thoughts?
Yeah. I guess closing thoughts would just be more about how I just worry that the disaffected nihilistic youth are just going to be out there. They're going to be influenced. I don't think that this shooter was some great political activist. So I think it's a little bit of a red herring to over focus on that. I think he was probably someone who, through some further investigation, we might find he was easily influential, maybe on the spectrum, and then, delved into some niche communities and was radicalized. And you could say that's, radical left, radical right, whatever. But the point being is that, the people celebrating and the media that has been participating in kind of fomenting this stuff and making it excusable, and even Elon Musk. I mean, think about how his reaction was when Nick Fuentes had his address posted all over the internet to be shared and viewed by millions and millions of people. And folks were showing up at his house, dozens, hundreds, until a gunman showed up, and gunned down a dog. I think 3 people on his way to Nick Fuentes' house, and then got shot just like a block away by the police. Like, this could have happened to Charlie Kirk or anybody else, and it seems very selective, in my opinion, and dangerous that we haven't really taken seriously this type of thing sooner. And there are both deranged people as well as people instigating it. And I'm not saying like Elon Musk specifically is instigating it. I just mean the general irresponsibility of people discussing it and allowing the type of stuff to happen to create the situation. Those are my closing thoughts.
Well, I don't know if I've seen Elon do enough to voice any disapproval of, let's say, the doxing campaigns that are clearly occurring every day at the moment. I wish he would. He's not going to. He doesn't do a lot of things that I wish he would.
He could fix the part where you report something and something happens.
Yes, that would be one of it. That would be one thing. He could fix the way that the actual features that you're supposed to have on the platform operate, as they say. But he's busy making sure that Grok lets me turn Charlie Kirk into a flying angel on the wings of Red Phoenix. So,
look, I got somebody sent me Ben Shapiro generated on the face of the assassin they were looking for, and I feel like it's all worth it at this point.
Okay, all right. Donald J. Trump, any additional thoughts?
No, not really. Just kind of more along the line of, like I said before, we're kind of at an impasse as to how do you deal with people who may or may not share the basic core principles of the United States of America and the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and just the philosophical underpinnings. It's a conundrum.
I think we've been there before. I mean, I just, if you go look at the early progressive era, I can't imagine you would conclude that would be the opportune time to be an American, even if you're like, hey, we were definitely on the right side of World War II or something, right? And we did all the right things there. We were the great good guys. I don't think if you ideologically found yourself right there that you would feel surrounded by like-minded people. There was a lot of insane things going on that I think you would find detestable, and by current standards. And there was a lot of nationalism that was an undercurrent. The Pledge of Allegiance was something that was created and instilled in the educational system, or became the sort of ritual that we all do. But that was something that came when we were hitting a streak of, sort of that fascistic streak that I was referring to, where we had a lot of, co-travelers with Nazi ideology. It was, that we are going to regiment people. We are going to get them to ritualize. We are going to get them to focus on the state. We are going to get them to see the state as the bringer of all that is good. And, there's a lot of mixed things with those sorts of ideas, right? I do love my country. I do love the United States of America, and I do love a lot of the ideas that created it, and I get a lot of inspiration from a lot of that. But our history has not been perfect, and we have survived. And I do enjoy living in the United States today. And while I have not lived in other countries to know exactly if my comparison would be, if I would feel just fine there too, where I am currently, I still enjoy. And there is a lot of things that can be good in the future and still bright and rosy with this country, where if you have a pessimistic view right now, I still think you would wind up having a pessimistic view about the country if you lived in 1920 or 1930. I don't know how you think about how you would react to a situation of rounding up all the Japanese and putting them in internment camps, right? Like, I don't know. Seems wild.
Yeah, I don't know how I'd act back then, especially with the information on hand. I will say this in support of you is I have lived in many countries for extended periods of time. First world, third world, second world, you name it, I've lived in it. No matter where you live, Europe, the Middle East, Africa, wherever, there's always kind of a social undercurrent of what you don't say about the government or what you don't say about society in general that I think the U.S. lacks, which is good, if that makes sense.
Well, if Elon Musk is successful, one of these days you'll live in the fourth world. Or fifth world, depending on whether that's virtual or Mars.
As long as that allows me to have more farmland, they can live in the virtual world.
Alex, do you have final thoughts as we close this out?
Yeah, it's I think the thing with the American values of freedom of speech, self-defense, you name it, private property, the whole shebang is that nobody naturally believes in them for everybody. I think few people I think I do, but I'm not the rule. And I don't know, maybe I don't make me king. I wouldn't trust myself fully even. So I think what we I've not been following extremely closely everything that's happening for a extensively long time, but I've watched COVID up close. I've watched Ukraine up close. I'm watching the new administration up close, and what I realized is that every administration is pulling the state to be bigger, and is pulling it to punish its enemies and help its friends. And I wish that this administration had spent its time until now to augment free speech and other things like self-defense or whatever, private property, but they didn't. Instead they brag about the first $1 trillion Pentagon budget. So to the degree that the thing to be fought over becomes larger and larger, there will be more fighting. That's how I feel. And there will be more and more at stake. So it will be more and more existential to control that thing until, somebody from one side or the other will make a stupid move and try to keep it permanently, because you can't allow it.
You'll need to replay the part that you missed, because I did go on a decent explanation of the mechanics of what you just described there with the bigger and bigger part.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. I mean, it is kind of insane to consider that there's a credible claim that the United States government is the largest organization in the history of mankind, by people, not by money.
Let's call it the largest disorganization.
Fair enough. So it controls a lot of things in a lot of ways, and of course, a lot of people are going to be very fucking unhappy about how some of those things are done. In fact, I could be unhappy about how most of those things are done, or even essentially all of them. But people can get tribal because some things hurt them in ways that they don't hurt others, and they can think that those things are really bad, and other people can think that those things are good and whatever. And that's why you need subsidiarity, right? That's why you need to break it up, keep it as small as possible, make decisions closest to the point where they're going to be applied, et cetera, et cetera. But I feel that that's the thing that is not being highlighted. The Constitution is essentially a protocol, right? And it's imperfect, and you could think of improvements, or you could make it worse, like Wilson. But regardless, it is a protocol, and it's implemented over flawed people, and it will continue to be so. But the real question to me is what happens when it effectively becomes irrelevant or gets worked around or whatever, and any boundaries it had are, I think somewhere in there it says that you should have privacy in your effects and papers. I don't remember what the thing is, right? but there's no, I don't know where that's gone. I don't see that being applied at all, right? Like my phone is my phone, but apparently it's not my phone.
Yeah, that's that commerce clause and stuff that'll get you.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure somehow I'm doing commerce with myself by writing down my thoughts.
But you interacted with something that interacts with interstate commerce.
Of course. I mean, everything is photons, right? Or something, energy. Anyway, long story short, it's just what is distressing to me about this whole situation is just seeing people work themselves up. And effectively, in Elon's words, the left is the party of murder, with the implication that some people will read is that we should murder them, not realizing that that's what the party of murder would say. And I realize that it's not, everything is not fully the same, and there's symmetries and asymmetries, and whatever. I understand the both sides argument, but what I'm saying is, like, tribalism fundamentally has a structure to it. And tribes are tribes, and they work in certain ways. And the ways they work is our people are good people, and their people are not good people. And that's the pattern you work with. In group, out group, the whole thing. And it's unfortunate that this thing is on the rise. And I'm concerned that maybe let me throw this out there. Did you notice that wokeness basically blew up after Occupy and the Tea Party happened? I don't know if you've heard this, let's call it conspiracy theory.
Okay.
But that essentially it was kind of put in the water as a way to stop people from the left and the right noticing that the financial centers, like, you can consider the Tea Party and Occupy Wall Street being a reaction to the bailing out of the big banks after the financial crisis.
Yeah.
Right. So it was almost like, holy shit, like we are one realization away from these people realizing that they're not each other's enemy, that they are both upset about too big to fail, ultimately.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if it's too big to fail, it's too big to exist, but that hasn't really shown, has not been put into policy. Mm-hmm. So I worry that whenever there is a wave of realizations happening across the public, that there are events that happen, and it could happen for organic or non-organic reasons, and it could be harnessed in certain ways, and that stops the realization, that stops the the straightening out of the of the meme space with the realization that wants to happen, and it keeps pushing harder and harder to be realized as division is being pushed harder and harder until there is a breaking point, and that's what worries me. I don't know if I'm making much sense, but that's where I am.
Well, I've said a lot, and I'll be saying more in the future. This was I needed to get these thoughts out of my head. What I compiled for the beginning half of this was everything that was flooding through my mind in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination. It's been a decently emotional week for me. I was not, again, I did not have a lot of affinity for Charlie Kirk. I didn't dislike him. I just, didn't pay much attention to him. I didn't necessarily care for his arguments and reasoning, but, he was just a guy. He didn't piss me off or anything, but he was around for the last 10 years in a way that he was just sort of a co-traveler. And his touch over these events, just being there, and his assassination has hit me just in a way. And so all of the events that transpired that were, co-traveling along with us, that led in some ways to his assassination, just began flooding through my head all sort of at once, and I needed to compile something to sort of get it all out. So that's what the first half of this is, and hopefully it was a decent tribute to him and the time period that he traveled with me through. I would just like to say, as I close this out, look around you, try to find something good to do with your energy to make the world just a little bit better for the people you love and know. That's the best that you'll be able to do in the short term while you try to figure out what to do about the larger political problems in the world. So with that, I hope everyone has maybe a little bit less of a dumb week. Take care.
Thank you, Gator.